Imagine stepping outside into the cool evening air and suddenly realizing that every glittering point suspended above you is a perfectly preserved ghost. You're not simply looking across vast, unfathomable distances, but peering deeply into the hidden corridors of cosmic history itself. The night sky is a magnificent living museum, continuously broadcasting the fiery births and silent deaths of ancient giants long after their physical forms have faded into the dark. Picture an invisible, ancient glow that permeates every single cubic inch of the space surrounding you, hiding just beyond the fragile edge of human vision. This fossilized luminescence is not emitted by any neighboring star, but is the very first light of creation, the cooling afterglow of a universe that was once a searing opaque plasma. It is a majestic, undying broadcast from the absolute dawn of time, buzzing silently and perpetually through the very room where you currently rest. Surprisingly, the chaotic, relentless rush of time you experience every single day is ultimately destined to settle into a quiet, undisturbed stillness. Deep within the invisible architecture of reality, the past, the present, and the distant future might already exist simultaneously as a beautiful, unchanging block of pure four-dimensional geometry. Eventually, the expanding cosmos will experience a slow, peaceful fade, leaving behind a perfectly cold and silent void that perfectly reflects the tranquility of a calm, frozen lake. This monumental scale of absolute shadow and ancient wandering light can seem overwhelming to the waking mind, yet you are completely and perfectly safe in this precise moment. Your bed is a remarkably secure harbour floating peacefully on the edge of eternity, firmly anchoring your heavy body while your consciousness drifts through the infinite. These mind-bending wonders and quiet giants are yours to peacefully inherit, serving as a gentle cosmic lullaby sung by the heavens to guide you gracefully into deep sleep. If we were to look closer at the comforting darkness gathering just beyond your window, the artificial boundary between the vast universe and your resting form smoothly begins to blur. The immense ticking clockwork of the celestial sphere intentionally slows its frantic pace, perfectly matching the steady, calming rhythm of your own breathing chest. Allow yourself to completely surrender to the grand, sweeping majesty of the night, ready to receive the oldest stories ever told. Feel the gentle warmth of starlight resting on your skin, a silent messenger from an era long past. Feel the gentle warmth of starlight resting on your skin, a silent messenger from an era long past. When you cast your gaze upward into the velvet canopy of the night, you're not merely looking across vast spatial distances, but peering deeply into the corridors of history. The glittering points of illumination scattered above are literal time capsules, presenting the cosmos exactly as it existed years, millennia, or even billions of years ago. This cosmic illusion occurs because light, despite being the fastest entity in the universe, still requires time to traverse the unfathomable voids between worlds. A star located 1,000 light-years away is showing you its state from 1,000 years in the past, entirely oblivious to the present moment unfolding on Earth. Therefore, the celestial dome is a breathtaking mosaic of different temporal realities, woven together into a single seamless image. Every glance at the heavens is an act of time travel, untethered from the constraints of our earthly clocks. You're witnessing the fiery birth of constellations and the quiet death of ancient giants in a delayed broadcast of cosmic proportions. The universe graciously allows us to read its history books simply by opening our eyes to the dark. Consider the golden rays that filter through the trees on a quiet afternoon, quietly bathing you in the past. Our local star, the Sun, sits at a staggering distance of roughly 93 million miles from our fragile blue planet. The light radiating from its turbulent nuclear furnace must embark on a lonely, silent journey across the frigid vacuum of the inner solar system before gracing our atmosphere. This journey is not instantaneous, requiring approximately 8 minutes and 20 seconds for a photon to bridge the gap between the solar surface and your retinas. Consequently, The sun you feel warming your shoulders is an apparition of what existed over 8 minutes ago, an unavoidable delay in the transmission of reality. If our star were to suddenly vanish, we would remain blissfully ignorant, continuing to orbit an empty space and bask in ghost light for several minutes. Such a realization shifts our understanding of the immediate present, proving that even our closest celestial companion is kept at a temporal arm's length. We are forever separated from the true now of the universe by the absolute speed limit of light. We live continuously in the aftermath of celestial events. Deep within the cosmos, the majestic spirals and elliptical clusters we admire are merely islands suspended in a much grander unseen structure. Entire galaxies, including our own Milky Way, drift freely through a vast invisible ocean of dark matter that dictates the fundamental architecture of reality. This mysterious substance emits no light, reflects no energy, and remains entirely impervious to our most sensitive optical instruments. Yet, its presence is undeniably felt through the immense gravitational grip it exerts on the luminous matter we can actually observe. Without the sheer, binding weight of these dark halos, the rapid rotation of galaxies would tear them apart, flinging stars out into the intergalactic void. Dark matter acts as the silent, uncredited sculptor of the universe, providing the essential scaffolding upon which all visible creation is delicately hung. As you move through your daily life, you are unknowingly passing through a universe dominated by ghosts. Our brilliant star-filled reality is merely a glowing foam riding on the crest of deep, dark and unfathomable cosmic waves. The true substance of the universe remains forever hidden in the shadows. Gravity reveals its ultimate mastery over the cosmos by manipulating the very paths that light is permitted to travel. As a beam of starlight journeys across the universe, it occasionally passes near incredibly massive objects like dense galaxy clusters or dormant black holes. The immense mass of these structures warps the surrounding fabric of space-time, creating deep gravitational valleys that the light must navigate. Rather than travelling in a straight, unyielding line, the starlight bends slightly as it follows the curved geometry of space, creating beautiful and silent cosmic lenses. This phenomenon, known as gravitational lensing, allows massive foreground objects to act as natural telescopes, magnifying and distorting the faint glow of galaxies lying far behind them. We're often treated to breathtaking optical illusions, where a single distant quasar appears as multiple mirrored images or a brilliant perfect ring of fire. The universe is thus filled with magnificent funhouse mirrors, bending the visual truth of our night sky. Space itself is not an empty, passive stage, but a flexible, dynamic medium that constantly refines our view of the infinite. Light has no choice but to follow the invisible contours of gravity's masterpiece. Spanning the absolute darkness of a clear night sky is a breathtaking river of pale light, long revered by ancient cultures as a celestial pathway. This glittering belt of the Milky Way is merely a peaceful side-on view of our local galactic neighbourhood, observed from our quiet vantage point within one of its spiral arms. Because our solar system is embedded deeply within the flattened disk of the galaxy, looking toward its centre means staring through a thick, overlapping concentration of billions of stars. The hazy, luminous band that results is not a solid object, but the collective glow of countless distant suns blending together into a continuous stream of light. Interspersed within this glowing river are dark, sprawling rifts of cold interstellar dust, obscuring the brilliant core from our earthly eyes. We are like travellers standing inside a vast, sparkling forest, unable to see the forest's true shape because of the sheer density of the illuminated trees. Understanding our position transforms the night sky from a random scattering of points into a structured three-dimensional home. We're gazing along the equator of a majestic spinning pinwheel suspended in the endless void. The milky band above is a constant reminder of our place within a much larger cosmic family. Surprisingly, the universe has no true centre. defying our deepest human instincts to find a singular point of origin or a definitive middle. When we observe distant galaxies rushing away from us in every conceivable direction, it is incredibly tempting to assume that Earth is resting perfectly at the heart of an explosive expansion. However, a hypothetical observer standing on a planet billions of light-years away would see the exact same phenomenon, with all galaxies retreating from their unique vantage point. This occurs because the expansion of the cosmos is not an explosion of matter moving through a pre-existing empty room. Instead, the very fabric of space itself is stretching, expanding the distances between all points simultaneously, much like the surface of an inflating balloon. Every single location in the cosmos can claim to be the center of the observable universe, rendering the concept of a true objective center mathematically meaningless. We are everywhere and nowhere all at once, adrift in a reality that scales uniformly without boundaries or a designated heart. The cosmos is a profoundly democratic structure, granting every floating speck of dust the exact same majestic illusion of centrality. The middle of everything is quite literally wherever you happen to be standing. Peer into the absolute darkest, coldest vacuum between the stars, and you will find an environment that defies the very definition of nothingness. Empty space is not truly empty, but a bubbling microscopic sea of temporary quantum particles constantly emerging and vanishing in a frenetic dance. According to the strange laws of quantum mechanics, absolute zero energy is an impossibility, meaning the void is perpetually alive with a restless underlying vibration. Virtual pairs of matter and antimatter spontaneously borrow energy from the universe to pop into existence, only to immediately collide and annihilate each other in fractions of a second. This chaotic, invisible phenomenon is known as the quantum foam, a seething foundation that underpins all of physical reality. Though these ghostly particles exist for unimaginably brief moments, their collective presence exerts a tiny but measurable pressure on the macroscopic world. The vacuum of space is therefore less like a barren desert and more like a roaring ocean, teeming with infinite potential and continuous unseen activity. Nothingness is merely a quiet illusion, masking a realm of relentless creation and destruction. The empty darkness is vibrantly, wonderfully alive. Buried within the crushing, unimaginably hot core of our sun, the violent fusion of hydrogen atoms produces brilliant bursts of pure energy. However, the light forged in this chaotic inferno does not immediately streak out into the coldness of the solar system. A photon born in the center of the sun can take over 100,000 years to gracefully weave its way to the surface, trapped in a remarkably dense maze of plasma. As the photon attempts to escape, it continuously collides with densely packed protons and electrons, being absorbed and re-emitted in completely random directions with every encounter. This agonizingly slow process, known as the random walk, transforms a journey that should take mere seconds into a multi-millennial odyssey. The light must struggle through hundreds of thousands of miles of boiling solar material before finally breaking free of the sun's fiery grasp. When that light finally kisses your skin on a warm summer day, you're receiving energy that was originally generated before the dawn of modern human civilization. It is an ancient, hard-won luminescence, a survivor of an epic struggle against the overwhelming density of its own birthplace. The sunlight you enjoy is a remarkably ancient gift. A profound sense of isolation begins to dawn when we recognize the ultimate trajectory of the celestial bodies surrounding us. Even the faintest twinkling stars in distant galaxies are gently moving away from us as the invisible fabric of space stretches relentlessly outward. Driven by the mysterious force of dark energy, the cosmos is engaged in an accelerating expansion, carrying everything that is not gravitationally bound further into the abyss. As these galaxies recede at ever-increasing speeds, the wavelengths of their emitted light are physically stretched, shifting toward the red end of the electromagnetic spectrum. This cosmological redshift is a silent visual testament to a universe that is systematically dismantling its own crowded architecture, growing vaster and colder with every passing second. Eventually, these distant beacons will be pushed beyond the horizon of our observability, their light unable to overcome the rapid expansion of the intervening space. We are living in a privileged era where the universe is still dense enough to provide a spectacularly illuminated night sky. Future cosmic generations will gaze into a sky largely stripped of external galaxies, entirely isolated in an ocean of unimaginable emptiness. The current beauty of the heavens is a fleeting, temporary arrangement. The most monumental physical process in the entire universe unfolds without generating a single echo. This steady expansion of space happens completely silently in the absolute vacuum between distant galaxies, a violent tearing of distances cloaked in perfect tranquility. Because sound requires a physical medium like air or water to propagate, the sheer emptiness of the intergalactic void strictly forbids any acoustic transmission of the cosmos's growth. Whole clusters of galaxies are being driven apart at speeds that defy human comprehension, yet the event produces no roar, no crash, and no whisper. It is a terrifyingly quiet majesty, an apocalyptic stretching of reality that plays out like a muted slow-motion film across the eons. We are left to deduce this immense cosmic violence purely through the delicate mathematical analysis of captured light. The universe reshapes its own fundamental geometry in a state of absolute unbreakable peace. The grandest movements of space-time are characterized not by explosive thunder, but by an eerie, profound silence that stretches on for infinity. The architecture of reality quietly redraws its own boundaries in the dark. As the architecture of reality quietly redraws its own boundaries in the dark, we must discard our oldest, most deeply ingrained assumptions about the invisible chains supposedly binding us to the ground. The comforting sensation of weight anchoring you securely to your chair is not the result of a traditional magnetic-like pull reaching up from the molten planetary core to drag you downward. Instead, it is the profound, counterintuitive consequence of existing within a fundamentally warped four-dimensional geometry that dictates the natural motion of all massive things. Feel the soft sensation of a heavy solid sphere rolling slowly on a stretched silk sheet, pressing a deep, sloping depression into the once taut, flawless fabric. Our massive rocky planet creates an identical invisible depression in the otherwise flat grid of the surrounding universe, warping the spatial dimensions into a remarkably steep invisible funnel. You are perpetually helplessly slipping down the sheer walls of this geometric valley, constantly intercepted and pushed upward by the solid, unyielding floor of the Earth's physical surface. Gravity is therefore not an active, reaching force dragging you aggressively downward, but the passive, yielding shape of space curving around the globe to gently guide your physical trajectory. The solid ground beneath your feet is essentially accelerating upward into your natural path, rudely interrupting your silent, effortless slide toward the true centre of the spatial dent. We are all permanently resting at the very bottom of a steep, unseen bowl, kept from falling further only by the chemical rigidity of the rock beneath us. Consider the exhilarating, breathless feeling of dropping rapidly on a terrifying amusement park ride, or stepping bravely off a towering high diving board into the empty air. Objects in a state of absolute freefall are not actually accelerating under the violent, commanding grip of a mysterious pulling force emanating from the dirt below. They are simply, peacefully travelling along the straightest possible mathematical lines, formerly known as geodesics, through a severely curved spatial environment that bends their path downward. Without the solid ground aggressively pushing up against their mass, freely falling objects experience the true, perfectly weightless reality of navigating a curved, frictionless universe. An apple detaching from a brittle tree branch does not suddenly feel a downward tug. Rather, it simply surrenders to the natural sloping contours of the local space-time geometry. To the perspective of the falling apple, it is floating perfectly still in a state of total peace, while the massive surface of the planet rapidly rushes up to intercept it. This brilliant realization fundamentally erases the terrifying illusion of falling, replacing it with a serene understanding of spatial geometry. You're merely drifting along the easiest path of least resistance, following a trajectory perfectly sculpted by the planet's immense bulk and undeniable density. The jarring sensation of weight and physical stress only returns when your straight, peaceful path through the curved void is abruptly interrupted by the planet's crust. Look toward the bright path of the morning sun and realize that our fertile world is not tethered to this burning sphere by any physical chain or invisible elastic band. The planet Earth perpetually circles the solar equator, not because it is trapped, but because it is endlessly rolling along a smooth, grand valley carved deeply into the cosmic fabric. The sun's overwhelming concentrated mass creates a gravitational depression so impossibly wide and deep that it dominates the local geometry of our entire solar neighbourhood. Our vibrant world is acting exactly like a speeding glass marble, tossed horizontally along the upper rim of a smooth, perfectly round ceramic bowl. The planet's raw momentum is desperately trying to carry it in a perfectly straight line toward the dark, frigid depths of the distant interstellar void. However, the steep, inward-downward curve of the sun's spatial valley continually bends that straight path into a closed, repeating elliptical loop that we call a year. Allow your body to relax entirely, sinking deeper into your resting place as you visualize the hidden structural mechanics operating all around you at this very second. Picture a heavy, solid bowling ball placed perfectly in the center of a taut, elastic trampoline to visualize how massive, burning stars warp their immediate surroundings. The heavy sphere drags the woven thread severely downward, creating a steep, conical funnel that aggressively and permanently alters the previously flat, two-dimensional surface. If you were to gently flick a smaller, lighter marble across this modified trampoline, it would no longer travel straight across to the other side of the mat. The marble would be inevitably captured by the sloping funnel, spiraling helplessly downward toward the heavy central mass in a rapidly decaying circular orbit. This beautiful analogy perfectly illustrates how the physical density of a celestial body literally stretches and distorts the spatial dimensions, forcing passing objects to curve around it. The seemingly empty fabric of reality is astonishingly pliable, yielding smoothly and predictably to the presence of heavy, concentrated matter wherever it resides. Every single celestial titan creates its own plunging funnel, turning the seemingly flat, pristine universe into a wildly undulating landscape of peaks, ridges, and valleys. The peaceful night sky is secretly a rugged, three-dimensional terrain full of invisible potholes and massive, sweeping gravitational sinkholes. Bring your attention directly back to your own resting form, noticing the exact volume of empty space your physical body currently occupies in this quiet room. Even your own biological structure creates an infinitesimally small, highly personal dent in the universe's grand geometry simply by possessing a measurable physical mass. You're not just a passive, ghostly observer sitting within the cosmic arena, but an active physical participant bending the fundamental shape of reality around your shoulders. Every individual atom of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen vibrating within your cells carries a tiny, undeniable weight that contributes to your overall gravitational signature. The invisible fabric of space elegantly yields to your physical presence, wrapping subtly and tightly around your skin to form a microscopic, customized valley that belongs only to you. If a scientist possessed an orbital instrument of unimaginable, godlike sensitivity, they could measure the exact fluctuating spatial curvature generated by your slowly breathing chest. You are your very own center of gravity, a localized, wandering distortion drifting smoothly through the much larger, deeper depressions created by the Earth and the Sun. Everything that possesses mass, from a single, drifting grain of sand to a towering, jagged mountain range, demands a permanent structural accommodation from the surrounding void. You leave a continuous, dynamic, geometric imprint on the architecture of the universe merely by existing in this exact moment. An elegant, silent conversation is perpetually occurring across the cosmos between the solid, burning matter of the stars and the invisible stage upon which they rest. Space calmly tells matter exactly how to move, providing the intricately curved tracks, steep funnels, and sloping valleys that dictate absolutely every celestial trajectory. A wandering, icy comet possesses no independent steering mechanism or propulsion. It merely follows the unyielding geometric dictates of the distorted space it currently occupies. Simultaneously, the heavy matter of the universe tells space exactly how to curve, using its inherent concentrated mass to press new valleys and ridges into the yielding tapestry. The two fundamental entities are locked in a continuous, inseparable feedback loop that drives the entire mechanical evolution and graceful motion of the heavens. As a blazing star travels rapidly through a galaxy, it drags its deep gravitational depression along with it, constantly reshaping the local geometry on the fly. This dynamic, endless interplay guarantees that the universe is never a static, rigid background, but a fluid, highly responsive partner in the cosmic dance. The seemingly empty void and the solid, brilliant stars are ultimately two interconnected sides of the exact same physical coin. They constantly negotiate the ongoing structural reality of the cosmos through this silent, reciprocal, and perfectly balanced physical relationship. Far above the swirling white clouds and turbulent weather systems of our atmosphere, human engineering must constantly reckon with the bizarre, elastic nature of the temporal dimension. Satellites providing our crucial global positioning networks are orbiting high in a region where the Earth's gravitational dent is significantly shallower than it is on the firm ground. Because these delicate machines are experiencing a demonstrably weaker geometric curvature, the fundamental progression of time actually runs slightly faster for their computers than it does for our earthly watches. If brilliant engineers did not actively program these orbital atomic clocks to artificially tick slower before launching them into the void, the entire navigation system would spectacularly fail within a matter of minutes. The clocks riding on the satellites are essentially pulling ahead of the clocks resting on the planet's surface by mere critical microseconds every single day they remain in orbit. We must intentionally hobble their flawless timekeeping to keep them permanently synchronized with the deep, slow gravitational valley where the entirety of humanity resides. Time is measurably heavier, thicker, and slower down here at the extreme bottom of the planet's spatial funnel, bogged down by the intense curvature of reality. Ascending a tall, rocky mountain or flying in a pressurized commercial jet literally causes you to age a microscopic, entirely unnoticeable fraction of a second faster than those remaining at sea level. The exact speed of your ticking watch is intimately and forever connected to the precise steepness of the invisible space you inhabit. Notice the quiet, steady rhythm of your own breathing, a comforting internal metronome keeping pace with your journey through this intensely warped, flexible reality. If we were to carefully aim a telescope at a massive, distant cluster of galaxies, we might observe a dying star detonating into a brilliant supernova directly behind it. However, because the intervening cluster has carved a spectacularly complex, jagged valley into the intervening space, the light from that explosion cannot take a single, direct path to reach our eyes. The fierce, dying light fractures into multiple distinct streams, each forced to independently navigate a completely different slope, ridge, and detour of the cluster's immense gravitational topography. Because some winding paths around the spatial dent are geometrically longer and steeper than others, these separated light streams absolutely do not arrive at our terrestrial telescope simultaneously. We might watch the exact same exploding star brightly appear in one corner of the sky today, and then watch the identical ghostly explosion repeat itself months or even years later in a slightly different location. This brilliant geometric phenomenon creates a magnificent temporal echo, allowing astronomers to watch a singular historical catastrophe magically replay itself multiple times across the dark canvas. The universe uses its own twisted, uneven geometry to organically record and rebroadcast the fiery death of ancient stars. A single, desperate flash of light is fractured and split into a delayed, staggering cosmic chorus. Violent, unfathomable catastrophes occurring in the absolute deepest, darkest reaches of the cosmos do not remain isolated events, but send tangible, energetic shudders across the vastness of the void. Gravitational waves ripple outward through the universe like quiet whispers across a calm cosmic pond, born directly from the furious, spiraling collisions of unimaginably dense objects. When the dead, heavy remnants of crushed stars violently merge into one another, they violently churn the surrounding fabric of space-time into a chaotic, churning gravitational storm. This immense, apocalyptic release of energy does not radiate as visible light or searing heat, but as pure, vibrating distortions in the very foundational geometry of the universe itself. These invisible, ghostly tsunamis radiate outward in perfect spheres at the exact speed of light, carrying the energetic structural signature of the collision across billions of empty light years. By the time these spreading ripples finally reach the shores of our isolated solar system, they have exhausted their fury, calming into incredibly faint subatomic spatial vibrations. We have recently built highly sensitive, miles-long laser interferometers hidden in the Earth just to catch the fleeting microscopic flutter of these passing waves. These miraculous instruments offer humanity an entirely new sensory organ, allowing us to literally feel the vibrating cosmos rather than merely looking at its silent light. The seemingly tranquil dark universe is actually constantly humming and shivering with the distant invisible drumbeats of colliding celestial titans. As these ancient invisible ripples quietly wash over our solar system, they fundamentally alter the structural shape of absolutely everything they touch without leaving a single visible trace. These passing waves physically stretch and squeeze the very dimensions of space by a fraction of an atomic nucleus as they pass straight through your resting body. For a fleeting, entirely imperceptible fraction of a second, the actual physical distance between your head and your toes becomes microscopically taller and then momentarily wider. You absolutely do not feel this profound structural distortion because your bones, the chair you rest upon, and the entire planet beneath you are all being stretched and compressed in exact, flawless unison. The entire coordinate system of reality is briefly shuddering, warping the cosmic measuring stick itself so the physical change goes entirely unnoticed by human biology and standard instruments. The wave passes entirely through the solid, rocky Earth, just as easily as bright sunlight passes through a pane of flawless, invisible glass. We are perpetually unknowingly bathed in these subtle geometric tremors originating from the violent, chaotic edges of the unknown universe. The seemingly rigid, dependable stage of our daily lives is actually constantly shivering with the physical echoes of distant, ancient celestial violence. You are a remarkably flexible entity, constantly being moulded, stretched, and quietly remoulded by the passing ghostly whispers of gravity. While we're quietly remoulded by the passing ghostly whispers of gravity, our journey through the cosmos reveals another, deeply personal flexibility regarding the passage of seconds and minutes. Listen closely to the rhythmic, slowing tick of an antique grandfather clock fading into silence, and realize that this steady metronome is not an absolute law of the universe. Moving through space at high speeds physically causes your personal experience of time to stretch and slow down, relative to an observer who remains completely stationary. This phenomenon, known as kinematic time dilation, means that the very rhythm of biological life and the mechanical turning of gears adjust dynamically based on your velocity. If you were to board a spacecraft and accelerate to a significant fraction of the cosmic speed limit, the ticking of your own watch would seem perfectly normal to your eyes. However, someone watching you through a powerful telescope from your point of departure would perceive your movements as agonizingly sluggish and delayed. You're effectively stepping out of sync with the temporal flow of your previous resting frame, carving your own customized timeline into the void. Speed acts as a literal brake on the forward march of the future, allowing the swift traveller to casually bypass the rapid aging of the world they left behind. Motion is the ultimate temporal decelerator. Deep within the metallic corridors of the International Space Station, this extraordinary temporal stretching is not a theoretical abstraction, but a measurable daily reality. The brave individuals living and working in this hurtling orbital laboratory actually age slightly slower than the billions of people calmly going about their lives on the terrestrial surface. Orbiting at incredible velocities to maintain their freefall around the globe, these explorers essentially purchase tiny, microscopic fractions of a second in extended youth. When they finally splash down and return to the rigid ground, they have technically time-travelled a microscopic distance into the future of their earthbound families. Their cells have undergone fewer metabolic cycles, and their onboard computers have processed slightly fewer operations than identical systems resting on the planet below. The sheer speed of their orbital path successfully counteracts the normal, relentless decay dictated by the planet's standard temporal flow. This microscopic divergence proves that our temporal existence is deeply malleable, bending and yielding to the physical energy we expend moving across the sky. To move swiftly is to rebel softly against the rigid tyranny of the ticking clock. We're all aging at different, highly customized rates, depending on how fast we're rushing through the dark. Instead, the cosmos is filled with an infinite multitude of individual, fiercely independent timelines, each dictated entirely by the unique velocity and perspective of the observer. Your personal clock, governed by your slow resting state on a small rocky world, has absolutely no authority over the clock of a comet hurtling through the outer solar system. We simply carry our own localized bubbles of time with us wherever we roam, projecting our specific temporal experience onto an indifferent void. This shatters the comfortable, deeply ingrained illusion that the past, present, and future are neatly organized, globally agreed upon compartments. Reality is a chaotic, beautiful symphony of different tempos and overlapping rhythms, none of which can claim to be the true, objective metronome. The passage of hours is a profoundly solitary, entirely subjective experience. Surprisingly, the universe demands a strict, unyielding budget for our total movement across the combined four-dimensional architecture of reality. The profound rule of relativistic motion dictates that the faster you travel through the three spatial dimensions, the slower you inevitably drift through the temporal dimension. You're always travelling at a constant, combined velocity through space-time. Any speed you allocate to moving through distance must be actively subtracted from your movement through time. When you're resting completely motionless on your couch, you're dedicating all your cosmic momentum entirely to aging, plunging forward through the hours at maximum speed. The moment you stand up and begin sprinting, a tiny fraction of your temporal momentum is physically diverted into your spatial velocity, microscopically slowing your aging process. To achieve absolute, perfect stillness in time, an entity would theoretically need to divert all its momentum into space, travelling at the ultimate cosmic speed limit. We are continuously trading seconds for distance, negotiating our path through the void with an invisible, finite currency of motion. Your physical speed and your temporal progression are intimately, inversely linked in an unbreakable mathematical seesaw. To race across the universe is to purposefully drag your feet across the calendar. If we were to look closer at the absolute boundaries of this cosmic speed limit, we would encounter the most perplexing, fundamental paradox of nature. A beam of light always moves at the exact same constant, blistering speed through a vacuum, regardless of how fast you're moving toward or away from its source. Whether you're charging headlong into a bright beacon or fleeing from it in a supremely swift rocket, that incoming light approaches you at the exact same unvarying velocity. In standard earthly logic, if you run toward a thrown ball, the ball appears to approach you significantly faster than if you were standing still. The universe absolutely refuses to apply this intuitive, common-sense arithmetic to the fundamental particles of illumination, stubbornly locking their speed at a fixed, universal constant for all possible observers. To ensure that this bizarre rule is never broken, the surrounding fabric of reality must violently distort itself to compensate for your changing perspective. The constancy of illumination is the rigid, unmoving anchor around which the entire flexible tapestry of space and time is desperately forced to pivot and bend. Because this single speed limit cannot ever be compromised, the lengths of physical objects and the duration of seconds must become liquid to maintain the balance. Light remains the only true, unyielding constant in a deeply shifting reality. This unwavering, uncompromising nature of illumination forces a radical re-evaluation of how we organize the sequence of events unfolding across the dark expanse. Because of the unyielding speed of light, two completely rational observers might peacefully and accurately disagree on whether two distant events happened at the exact same moment. Simultaneity is not an objective fact of the universe, but a highly subjective interpretation dependent entirely on your specific vantage point and velocity. If a brilliant green flare and a brilliant red flare erupt on opposite sides of a vast galaxy, a stationary observer situated perfectly in the middle will declare they exploded simultaneously. However, a traveller streaking past that same midpoint in a swift vessel will fly toward the green light, encountering its approaching photons slightly before the red light catches up from behind. To the speeding traveller, the green explosion demonstrably and undeniably occurred first, while the stationary observer is equally correct in stating they happened at the exact same instant. Take a slow, deep breath, feeling your lungs expand and contract in the quiet comfort of your terrestrial sanctuary, completely isolated from these extreme relativistic distortions. Imagine leaving this gentle sanctuary to embark on a daring, hyper-fast journey near the ultimate speed limit toward a fascinating, distant star system. Such an incredible voyage might only take a few short years of biological aging and calendar flipping for the intrepid traveller enclosed within the swiftly moving hull. However, when that traveller bravely turns their ship around and decelerates back into the familiar orbit of their home world, they will encounter a profoundly alien landscape. While only a mere handful of seasons passed within the isolated bubble of the speeding cabin, countless centuries will have marched relentlessly forward for the civilizations resting on the planet. Entire generations of humanity will have been born, lived out their complex lives, and faded into ancient history during what felt like a brief excursion to the pilot. By accelerating to such extreme velocities, the traveller has effectively weaponized time dilation to vault themselves deeply into the unknowable future of their origin point. The cost of exploring the deepest reaches of the cosmos is the absolute permanent severing of all ties to the era you left behind. The universe permits forward time travel, but it demands exile as the unnegotiable price. This extreme temporal stretching is not merely a thought experiment reserved for hypothetical starships, but a measurable phenomenon raining down upon your head at this very second. Interestingly, tiny subatomic particles called muons survive their violent plunge through our thick planetary atmosphere only because time comfortably slows down for them at highly relativistic velocities. These incredibly fragile particles are forged high in the upper stratosphere when chaotic, incoming cosmic rays violently strike the gaseous envelope shielding our world. Under normal, resting conditions, a muon is so incredibly unstable that it decays and ceases to exist in a tiny, fleeting fraction of a microsecond. If they experience time at the same rate we do, they would completely disintegrate long before travelling even a few dozen yards toward the dirt. Yet, Because they are born moving at nearly the speed of light, their internal subatomic clocks freeze almost entirely, allowing them to easily traverse the miles of sky and strike the surface. The fact that our sophisticated earthly detectors can catch these ghostly subatomic visitors proves that velocity truly stretches the lifespan of matter. From the frantic perspective of the plunging Moon, the atmosphere physically flattens into a remarkably thin pancake, allowing a quick, effortless hop to the ground. Relativity provides an invisible shield of delayed decay, escorting the impossible travelers safely to the soil. The concept of a shared present only functions effectively within a tiny, incredibly localized bubble, where speeds are relatively uniform and gravitational differences are negligible. The further you look outward into the deep void, the more profoundly the concept of simultaneity breaks down, rendering the idea of a universal snapshot completely impossible. An alien civilization gazing at our solar system right now might be witnessing the fiery birth of our sun, utterly disconnected from your current evening reading. You're existing on an isolated temporal island, cut off from the true synchronization of the broader cosmos by the vast, unbridgeable delays of light and relativistic shifts. We're completely surrounded by the ancient past and the inaccessible futures of other observers. Your current breath, your current heartbeat, and your current thought are entirely exclusive to your tiny coordinate in the dark. Slowly unclench your hands and feel the solid, reassuring texture of the world around you, a world that seems delightfully stable and perfectly synchronized with your neighbors. Our daily experience of a shared, simultaneous present is merely a gentle, comforting illusion born entirely from our remarkably slow biological speeds and our shared planetary home. Because we are all riding the exact same rocky sphere through the void, crawling along at identical sluggish paces, our individual temporal bubbles overlap almost flawlessly. We do not perceive the radical, elastic nature of time because we simply lack the immense energy required to break out of our mutual low-speed consensus. If human beings naturally moved at significant fractions of the speed of light, our daily interactions would be chaotic, fractured messes of delayed reactions and disjointed histories. Evolution has graciously shielded our minds from the dizzying relativistic truth of reality, providing a calm, unified stage for us to build our civilizations. This synchronized reality is a beautiful, necessary fiction, a quiet harbour of mutual experience floating within a much wilder, profoundly disconnected cosmic ocean. The shared ticking of our collective watches is a symptom of our confinement, not a reflection of the universe's true elastic nature. We are simply moving too slowly to notice that the rigid clockwork of reality is actually a fluid, yielding mirage. Within this fluid, yielding mirage of reality, there exist places where the fabric of space-time is pulled so steeply that the very concept of an exit dissolves into the abyss. These regions are the quietest, most absolute expressions of cosmic curvature, where gravity has achieved a total and permanent victory over every other force in the known universe. If we were to look closer at such a point, we would find a serene darkness so profound that not even a single photon of light, moving at its maximum possible speed, possesses the energy to climb back out into the visible world. Unlike a traditional planetary surface, these dark spheres possess no solid crust, rocky terrain, or tangible atmosphere, serving instead as pure geometric bottomless wells. The steepness of the spatial distortion becomes so extreme that every possible path in the future leads inevitably inward, toward the dark heart of the well. This is a region of the universe that has effectively severed its connection with the rest of existence, creating a one-way bridge where information enters but never returns. Standing safely at the edge of such a calm, bottomless well, you would feel a sense of absolute unnerving stillness. The universe here has reached a state of ultimate rest, where the frantic activity of light and energy is swallowed by a perfect, unmoving shadow. It is the final destination for any matter that strayed too close, a peaceful surrender to the fundamental geometry of the dark, where the very concept of outside ceases to be a reachable destination. At this invisible boundary, known as the event horizon, the universe reaches its ultimate temporal limit and its most profound threshold. This is the precise geometric perimeter where the escape velocity required to leave exactly equals the universal speed limit of light, a mathematical line in the sand beyond which nothing can ever return. From the safe perspective of a distant outside observer, the passage of time for anything approaching this boundary appears to slow down until it essentially comes to a complete and eternal standstill. The curvature of space-time is so intense at this perimeter that the very flow of the future is redirected into a closed, inescapable loop. If you were to watch a starship venture toward this edge, you would see it appear to move with increasing reluctance, as if the vacuum itself had turned to thick, transparent syrup. The ship would never actually be seen to cross the threshold, but would instead fade into a static, reddened ghost of itself, forever hovering at the precipice of the unknown. This boundary represents a fundamental edge of reality, a place where the history of an object is effectively frozen in place for the rest of eternity. It is the cosmic equivalent of a quiet, undisturbed shore, where the waves of time have finally ceased their constant motion. Beyond this line, the concept of later loses all physical meaning for the outside world, creating a permanent visual monument to the captured moment that will endure as long as the black hole itself. Imagine holding an antique grandfather clock and releasing it to drift peacefully toward the dark maw of a black hole while you watch from a distance. As the clock descends into the deepening gravitational well, the rhythmic metallic tick that once marked the seconds would begin to stretch and draw out into a low, haunting moan. The hands on the clock face would appear to move with a profound, growing exhaustion, each tiny movement taking longer than the one before until the interval between seconds spans lifetimes. To your distant eyes, the mechanical intervals of time would eventually become so dilated that a single second might seem to span years, decades, or even centuries of your own life. Surprisingly, the clock would eventually reach a point where its hands appear to freeze beautifully in place, locked in a permanent silent tableau just before the event horizon. This visual artifact is a direct consequence of the way gravity stretches the very light, carrying the image of the clock to your retinas, shifting its frequency until it fades into invisibility. Take a moment to feel the steady, unmoving weight of your own body resting in this quiet room, far removed from such temporal distortions. While your own heart beats in a predictable, earthly rhythm, that distant clock has entered a realm where a single moment is preserved forever. It serves as a beautiful, tragic monument to the power of gravity to arrest the very march of the universe and hold the present in an eternal embrace of light and shadow. Deep within these dark, silent spheres, the familiar architecture of our world undergoes a total and catastrophic collapse. Beyond the event horizon, the pull toward the centre is so absolute that all matter and energy are crushed into a single, infinitesimal point of infinite density known as a singularity. In this extreme environment, the very dimensions of length, width, and height lose their independent meaning, merging into a state that defies all human intuition and mathematical modelling. This structure represents the absolute limit of our current scientific understanding, a place where the general theory of relativity and quantum mechanics clash in a silent, mathematical standoff. The laws of physics that govern the behaviour of atoms, the movement of planets, and the flow of heat simply dissolve into a state of pure, unknowable mystery. It is as if the universe has encountered a logical knot it cannot untie, a point where the fabric of reality is torn so severely that it ceases to exist in any recognisable form. Here, the geometry of space-time becomes so infinitely curved that the path to the centre is no longer a choice, but the only possible direction for the future to unfold. It is a place of ultimate compression, where the entirety of a collapsed star's history is squeezed into a volume smaller than a single grain of sand. The singularity is the quiet, dark destination where the universe's physical rules are finally laid to rest, leaving only a hole in the sky that remains a permanent scar on the fabric of existence. Surprisingly, the universe is not just dotted with small black holes, but is fundamentally anchored by colossal, supermassive giants that sit quietly at the heart of nearly every large galaxy. These gargantuan entities possess masses millions or even billions of times greater than our own Sun, exerting a gravitational influence that shapes the evolution of entire star systems. They act as the central anchors for the vast, glowing whirlpools of stars and gas that we recognise as our galactic neighbours, holding the spiral arms together with invisible hands. Deep within the Milky Way, a silent titan known as Sagittarius A star resides in the central darkness, governing the orbits of the stars that swirl around it in a majestic multi-million-year dance. Without the steady, grounding presence of these central giants, the structure and stability of galaxies would be drastically different, perhaps lacking the organised spiral patterns we admire. These black holes are the quiet, invisible directors of the cosmic theatre, maintaining order from the shadows of the galactic core while stars flare and die around them in an endless cycle. Despite their immense power, they rarely consume their surroundings with the veracity depicted in fiction, often resting in a state of tranquil dormancy. They are like the silent, heavy keystones of a grand cathedral, holding up the roof of the heavens while remaining largely unseen and undisturbed. We live our lives in the outer suburbs of a vast empire ruled by a central, lightless sun that provides gravity rather than light, ensuring the celestial stage remains intact for billions of years. If we were to look closer at the relationship between these giants and their surrounding environments, we would find a surprising and delicate balance. Despite their destructive reputation, supermassive black holes actually play a crucial role in orchestrating the gentle dance of star formation across the cosmos. As they occasionally draw in gas and dust, they release powerful jets of energy and radiation that ripple outward through the galactic disk, shaping the clouds of creation with invisible hands. These energetic outbursts act as a cosmic thermostat, heating up the surrounding clouds of interstellar gas and preventing them from collapsing too quickly or too chaotically. By regulating the temperature and motion of this gas, the black hole ensures that stars are born at a steady, sustainable pace, rather than all at once in a short-lived burst. This feedback loop creates a symbiotic relationship where the growth of the central black hole is intimately linked to the long-term health and fertility of the entire galaxy. Feel the gentle, steady warmth of your own breath, a small-scale reflection of the life-sustaining energy cycles that govern the stars. We owe our existence to these dark architects, whose influence prevents the universe from exhausting its stellar fuel in a premature flash of light. In the grand scheme of reality, the black hole is a creator as much as it is a consumer, fostering the light by managing the dark and ensuring the stars have a place to thrive. This cosmic structure of absolute shadow is not always invisible, but is often framed by a beautifully glowing halo of trapped light known as a photon ring. As light from distant stars or surrounding gas clouds passes near the event horizon, the extreme gravity forces it to bend into tight circular orbits. Instead of falling in or escaping into space, these photons become momentarily trapped in a precarious geometric loop, creating a brilliant, shimmering crown around the central abyss. The photon ring is a visual representation of the absolute limit where light can still exist as a distinct entity before being lost to the darkness forever. It serves as a glowing boundary, highlighting the stark silhouette of the black hole against the vibrant backdrop of the universe. This halo is composed of light that has travelled from every direction in the sky, bent and focused into a single, thin circle by the immense gravitational lens of the whole, creating a unique signature in the dark. If you could stand near such a ring, you would see the light of the entire universe compressed into a luminous, razor-sharp edge of gold and white. It is a place where the visual reality of the cosmos is distilled into its purest form, caught in a perpetual glowing orbit around the nothingness. This ring is the universe's way of marking the edge of the map, a final, brilliant signature of the light before it surrenders to the gravity of the silent giant. A rotating black hole exerts a profound influence on the surrounding environment through a phenomenon called frame dragging, altering the very meaning of position. This effect causes the very fabric of spacetime to be dragged along with the rotation of the hole, much like honey smoothly twirling around a spoon as it is stirred. In this region, known as the ergosphere, it is physically impossible for an object to remain stationary relative to the distant stars, as the floor of reality itself is in motion. Even if you possessed a rocket engine of infinite power, the twisting of the spatial dimensions would force you to orbit in the same direction as the black hole's spin. Space itself becomes a moving conveyor belt, carrying everything within it on a relentless circular journey around the central shadow. This dragging effect is so powerful that it creates a region where the laws of motion are fundamentally rewritten by the hole's rotation, turning the void into a swirling carousel. The coiling of space-time violently yet silently whips the absolute fabric of reality into an inescapable vortex that defies our understanding of stability. This frame-dragging effect becomes so extreme that it can actually sap the rotational energy of the black hole, flinging matter and light outward with incredible velocity. This process, occurring in the turbulent region just outside the event horizon, is responsible for some of the most energetic displays in the known cosmos, turning the dark into a beacon. As the spatial dimensions are coiled and twisted by the spinning mass, they generate immense magnetic fields that act as cosmic particle accelerators. These fields launch narrow, brilliant jets of matter across millions of light years, piercing through the hearts of galaxies and stretching into the intergalactic void. The silent rotation of a dark sphere thus becomes a source of immense directed power, capable of influencing the large-scale structure of the universe itself while remaining perfectly calm at its centre. The calm, bottomless well we once imagined is revealed to be a dynamic, churning engine of pure geometry and motion. It is a reminder that even the deepest darkness can be a source of profound activity when it is set into motion. The very fabric of the world is not a static canvas, but a flexible sheet that can be wound up like a spring by the giants of the dark, waiting to release its power in a silent cosmic scream. Eventually, even the most massive and permanent-seeming black holes must succumb to a slow, quiet process of decay known as Hawking radiation. Over unimaginably long periods of time, a black hole will begin to evaporate, whispering away its immense mass as a faint, steady stream of thermal radiation. This phenomenon occurs at the event horizon, where quantum fluctuations produce pairs of particles that are occasionally separated by the gravitational divide of the hole, leaving one to drift away. One particle falls into the dark, while its partner escapes into the void, carrying away a tiny microscopic fraction of the black hole's total energy. This process is incredibly slow for large black holes, taking trillions upon trillions of years, a span of time that dwarfs the current age of the universe. However, as the black hole loses mass, the rate of evaporation accelerates, leading to a final brilliant flash of energy as the hole vanishes completely into the vacuum, leaving nothing behind but a faint echo. Resting here in the present, we can appreciate the incredible longevity and the ultimate mortality of these cosmic giants. They are not eternal prisons, but temporary stores of energy that will eventually return to the universe from which they were born. Even the most profound darkness is destined to eventually rejoin the light in a final, peaceful synthesis of radiation and void, marking the end of the giant's long and silent vigil. As the giant's long and silent vigil draws to an end, our perspective shifts from the local darkness of black holes to a pervasive, ancient glow that permeates every cubic inch of the sky. This invisible luminescence is not emitted by any distant star or neighbouring galaxy, but is the fossilized remnant of the universe itself when it was a searing, opaque plasma. the entire universe is perpetually bathed in the cosmic microwave background, the lingering and cooling afterglow of the primal spark that set reality in motion. This pervasive glow fills the void, ensuring that even the deepest empty spaces between the galaxies are never truly devoid of energy or history. It travels from a time when the cosmos was significantly smaller, hotter, and more densely packed than the sprawling expanse we inhabit today. You're existing within the residual heat of a beginning so energetic that its structural echoes still ripple through the modern era like a fading chime. Before the stars ever ignited, this radiation was the only light in existence, a brilliant and uniform white heat that dominated the early stages of the world. Now, billions of years later, it has calmed into a steady, low-frequency whisper that blankets the cosmos in a state of perfect thermal equilibrium. It is the oldest energy in the universe, an undying witness to the moment when the void first became a place of light. This ancient light was released only when the frantically expanding universe finally cooled enough for the first simple atoms to form out of a hot, glowing fog. In the era preceding this transition, the cosmos was a roiling soup of free-floating electrons and protons that acted as a dense, impenetrable thicket, trapping light in a state of perpetual scattering. Photons could not travel more than a few inches before being deflected by a charged particle, rendering the entire universe a blinding, opaque mist. Eventually, the temperature dropped to a critical threshold where the electrons could finally be captured by protons to create neutral hydrogen atoms, a process known as recombination. As these first atoms formed, the cosmic fog suddenly cleared, and the light that had been trapped for eons was abruptly liberated to stream freely across the abyss. This first burst of radiation began a journey across the void that continues to this very second, carrying the news of a transparent universe. Surprisingly, the moment this light was set free represents the true birth of the observable world, as it provided the first medium through which the story of the cosmos could be told. We are seeing the light from a time when the universe was only 380,000 years old, a mere blink in the grand timeline of eternity. This transition from fog to clarity is the foundational event that allowed the heavens to become visible to the eye. Notice the calm, steady weight of your arms as they rest against your sides, a solid presence in a world built upon these ethereal ancient foundations. Surprisingly, a small but significant percentage of the chaotic static on an untuned analog television comes directly from this ancient, omnipresent cosmic radiation. If you were to sit in a darkened room and listen to the faint static hum of a quiet radio tuned peacefully between stations, you would be experiencing the physical signature of the universe's birth. This white noise is a tangible echo of the beginning of time, a constant background hiss that has been travelling through the void for nearly 14 billion years. The sensitive antenna of your electronic devices is literally picking up the residual heat of the Big Bang, converting the oldest light in existence into a grainy, audible rhythm. It is a profound realization that the technology in your living room can act as a direct portal to the absolute beginning of reality. We often think of the deep past as something distant and unreachable, yet it is currently buzzing through the air and vibrating against the electrical components of our daily lives. The static that we perceive as a nuisance is actually a majestic broadcast from the dawn of creation, a signal that has survived the stretching of space itself. You are perpetually tuned into the frequency of the first light, whether you are aware of its presence or not. By delicately mapping this background glow with specialized satellite arrays, scientists can trace the microscopic wrinkles in spacetime that eventually blossomed into the grand architecture of galaxies. These minute temperature fluctuations, appearing as slight patches of warmth or cold in the early sky, represent regions of slightly higher or lower density in the primordial gas. Without these tiny imperfections, the universe would have remained a smooth, featureless sea of hydrogen, forever devoid of the complex structures we admire. Gravity eventually seized these tiny variations, pulling more and more matter into the slightly denser zones, until they collapsed into the first great clusters of suns. These wrinkles in the cosmic microwave background are the seeds of everything that exists, from the colossal filaments of the cosmic web to the individual planet beneath your feet. We're essentially living in the overgrown ruins of these ancient density fluctuations, sculpted by the patient hands of time and gravity. If we were to look closer at the map of this first light, we would see the blueprint for every supercluster and void that now defines the visible heavens. This ancient glow acts as a structural bridge, connecting the subatomic ripples of the beginning to the massive luminous cities of stars that we call home. The night sky is a living map, showing us exactly how a smooth fog was transformed into a masterpiece of complexity. Deep within the earliest moments of existence, the universe underwent a brief, quiet and monumental epoch called inflation that defied all conventional concepts of scale. During this vanishingly small fraction of a second, the fabric of the cosmos expanded exponentially, growing from something smaller than a subatomic particle to a size vastly larger than the observable horizon. This rapid burst of growth smoothed out the wrinkles of reality, ensuring that the universe appears remarkably uniform in every direction we gaze. The inflationary epoch acted as a colossal cosmic iron, pressing the early universe flat and spreading the primordial energy with absolute precision across the growing void. This era was so energetic and brief that it essentially dictated the flat geometry and uniform temperature of the modern cosmos. It solved the great mystery of why parts of the sky that have never been in contact appear to have the exact same physical properties and history. As you sit in this quiet room, allow your mind to expand alongside the memory of that first, great surging of the spatial dimensions. Inflation was the heartbeat of the universe's infancy, a single, powerful expansion that set the stage for billions of years of more gradual development. It is the reason the sky possesses a coherent, consistent logic, providing a stable foundation for the eventual arrival of life. Because the fabric of space itself was expanding rather than objects moving through it at high velocities, this rapid growth did not violate any cosmic speed limits. While the ultimate speed limit of light strictly governs how fast information can travel through the vacuum, it places no restriction on how fast the vacuum itself can stretch or balloon. The early universe could therefore grow at a rate far exceeding the speed of light, carrying the blueprint of future galaxies along with its surging invisible tide. This distinction between spatial expansion and physical velocity is a crucial pillar of our understanding of the large-scale structure of reality. Space is not a rigid box, but a flexible, dynamic medium that can create new distance between points, at any rate the laws of physics demand. During inflation, the distance between two adjacent points grew so fast that they were essentially ripped away from each other's influence in an instant of pure geometric stretching. The universe was not moving through an empty room, but was creating the room itself at an inconceivable pace that left the stars and light far behind. This process ensures that the vast majority of the universe remains forever beyond our sight, pushed into the shadows by the sheer speed of its own growth. We are living in a tiny, observable bubble within a much larger invisible ocean of space that stretched away from us at the very start. As the universe continues to stretch over billions of years, the ancient light travelling through it gracefully stretches too, shifting from visible colours into invisible microwaves. This phenomenon occurs because the very wavelengths of the photons are pulled apart by the expansion of the spatial grid, losing energy and frequency with every light year they traverse. The once brilliant orange-white heat of the early cosmos has been transformed into a cold, low-energy whisper that requires sensitive radio telescopes to detect. This cosmological redshift acts as a gentle cooling mechanism, taking the searing ferocity of the beginning and turning it into a subtle background hum. If space were not expanding, the night sky would still be as hot and bright as the surface of the sun, making life as we know it an impossibility. We owe our temperate dark nights to the stretching of these ancient photons as they race through the ever-growing void between the galaxies. Every microwave photon currently passing through your body was once a part of a much more energetic, brilliant flash of primordial light. The journey from high-frequency energy to a low-frequency glow is the visual record of the universe's immense age and its quiet, ongoing expansion. The cosmos has cooled its own passions, turning the fire of the beginning into a calm, pervasive radiation that protects the darkness of the modern sky. Looking deeply into this microwave glow is literally looking at the undisturbed baby picture of the entire known cosmos, captured at the exact moment the light was first set free. This image provides a pristine snapshot of the universe as it existed before the first star ever turned on its nuclear furnace, or the first galaxy gathered its spiral arms. It is the most distant and ancient horizon we can ever hope to see, a final curtain of radiation that hides the chaotic, opaque era of the universe's earliest infancy. This surface of last scattering represents the physical limit of our direct visual knowledge of the past, beyond which no light can ever penetrate. By studying the patterns in this baby picture, we can deduce the laws of physics that operated when the entire universe was the size of an orange. It is a direct link to our origins, a glowing silhouette of the foundations of reality that remains perfectly preserved in the cold depths of the void. Surprisingly, this baby picture is not a static relic, but a vibrant and complex data set that continues to reveal new secrets about the nature of dark matter and energy. It is the ultimate historical document, written in the language of radiation and preserved by the absolute vacuum of space. When we map the cosmic microwave background, we are looking at the face of the universe as it took its very first breath of clarity. The baseline temperature of empty space is currently just barely above absolute zero, preserving a chilly and calm record of what was once a fiery, inconceivable beginning. This temperature, measuring approximately 2.7 degrees above the point where all atomic motion ceases, is the result of billions of years of cosmic expansion diluting the original heat. Even in the deepest, loneliest voids between the clusters of galaxies, the universe remains slightly warmed by the fading embers of its own creation. This coldness is not a sign of death, but of a mature, expanded universe that has spread its energy across a vast, nearly infinite stage. The heat of the Big Bang has been distributed so thoroughly that it now manifests as a subtle, uniform warmth that fills the entirety of existence. It is a state of profound thermal peace, where the violent fluctuations of the early era have been smoothed into a quiet, cold equilibrium. Resting here in the present, you can appreciate the immense journey from the billions of degrees of the early plasma to the chilly stillness of the modern vacuum. The universe has spent 14 billion years cooling down, creating the stable and temperate environment necessary for complex matter and consciousness to emerge. The cold of space is a testament to the scale of the expansion, a quiet reminder of how far we have travelled from the heat of the start. It is a comforting and profound thought that we are perpetually surrounded by the gentle warmth and fading light of the universe's birth at every moment of our lives. This ancient radiation flows through your body, the walls of your home, and the very air you breathe as a silent, invisible companion to the present. You are never truly alone in the dark, but are held within the cooling, expansive embrace of the very first light that ever illuminated the path for everything that was to come. The energy of the beginning is not a distant memory, but a physical reality that is intimately connected to your exact coordinate in the cosmos. Every breath you take is synchronized with the fading pulse of the primordial fire, a fire that has been stretched and cooled into a soft, protective blanket of radiation. We are swimming in a sea of history, a vast and quiet reservoir of light that serves as the cradle for all of existence. This realization ties our personal experience of reality to the grandest possible timeline, bridging the gap between the mundane and the infinite. The universe began with a flash, and that flash is still here. watching over us with a quiet and enduring luminescence. We are the inheritors of that first light, the stardust travellers living within the cooling afterglow of a miracle that is still unfolding all around us. This unfolding miracle of cosmic expansion is not merely a passive drifting of matter through a pre-existing void, but a deliberate and accelerating push driven by a force that remains the most profound enigma in our understanding of reality. Deep within every cubic inch of the vacuum, a mysterious, pervasive and remarkably calm force known as dark energy exerts a constant outward pressure that compels the very fabric of the universe to stretch at an ever-increasing rate. While gravity works tirelessly on a local scale to pull stars and planets into intimate orbits, this dark energy acts as a quiet, invisible counterweight that ensures the grand stage of the cosmos continues to grow larger and more desolate with every passing second. The influence of this force is so subtle that it cannot be felt within our own solar system, or even our galaxy, where the concentrated grip of matter is strong enough to resist the outward tide. However, across the immense lonely stretches between the distant clusters of galaxies, dark energy becomes the undisputed master of the spatial dimensions, driving the expansion faster than the combined pull of all the visible stars in existence. It is a smooth and unyielding energy that does not flicker or fade, but remains a constant intrinsic property of the spatial fabric itself, quietly orchestrating the ultimate destiny of the world. Surprisingly, the brilliant stars, swirling nebulae, and solid planets we observe are only a minor fraction of the total substance that defines our reality, serving as a mere luminous decoration on a much darker foundation. This invisible energy is so dominant that it constitutes roughly 70% of all the mass and energy within the known universe, quietly dictating the geometric evolution of everything we can see. We exist within a vast, dark ocean where the visible matter is merely a scattering of foam on the surface of a deep and powerful current that we are only beginning to comprehend. If we were to tally the cosmic budget, we would find that everything we have ever touched, measured or photographed represents a small and humble minority of the universe's total energy content. This dark energy does not cluster or pool like the gas in a star, but instead spreads itself with perfect uniformity, filling every gap in the cosmic architecture with its silent, overwhelming presence. It is the primary occupant of the void, a ghostly and omnipresent master that remains entirely transparent to the most sensitive instruments of human science. The nature of this energy is uniquely tied to the volume of space itself, creating a self-sustaining feedback loop that fuels the relentless growth of the cosmos. As the distance between distant galaxies naturally increases due to the expansion, more volume is created, and this new void is immediately and automatically filled with even more dark energy. This constant replenishment gently pushes the boundaries of the universe outward with even greater ferocity, ensuring that the expansion is not just constant, but perpetually speeding up as more space is added to the total. As you remain still, your own physical form is currently resting on a planet that is being carried along by this massive, invisible tide of growing space. Unlike a traditional explosion that loses momentum over time, this cosmic surge gains strength as it proceeds, driven by the fact that the vacuum itself is a source of repulsive energy. The more the universe grows, the more fuel it gains for further expansion, creating a runaway process that will eventually reshape the entire horizon of the night sky. This structure of accelerating growth creates a terminal horizon beyond which the light of distant galaxies can no longer traverse the widening gap to reach our telescopes. The space between our local neighbourhood and the furthest reaches of the observable universe is stretching so rapidly that incoming photons are effectively running on a treadmill that is moving backward faster than they can travel forward. Eventually, the most distant beacons of light will slip forever into the shadows, their information lost to us as the expansion exceeds the ultimate speed limit of light. If we were to look closer at these receding galaxies, we would see their images slowly fade and redden as the space between us expands, until they simply wink out of existence for all eternity. This process is a silent and permanent severing of the cosmic connections that have existed since the beginning of time. The universe is actively dismantling its own visual history, pushing the stories of distant worlds beyond a point where they can ever be retrieved by our eyes. If we were to project this trend billions of years into the future, we would witness a slow and inevitable transformation of the night sky into a state of absolute, haunting tranquility. Every galaxy outside our immediate local cluster will eventually be carried away by dark energy so far and so fast that the space beyond our own stars will appear completely dark and empty. The future inhabitants of our world will gaze into a sky stripped of the vibrant tapestries of light that currently define our cosmic neighborhood, believing themselves to be the only inhabitants of a lonely and lightless void. This great loneliness represents the ultimate triumph of dark energy over the visual complexity of the heavens, leaving our descendants with a view that is as peaceful as it is desolate. The shimmering clouds of the Andromeda Galaxy and the distant glimmers of the Virgo cluster will be gone, leaving only the stars of our own merged galactic home to provide light. It is a comforting but eerie realization that our current era is a privileged moment of cosmic visibility that is destined to pass into an era of eternal shadow. While dark energy pushes the universe apart, another invisible titan works in the opposite direction to preserve the intricate structures of the luminous world from total dissipation. Dark matter acts as the unseen scaffolding of the universe, providing the essential gravitational glue that holds rapidly spinning galaxies together against the centrifugal forces that would otherwise tear them asunder. Without this heavy and silent companion, the stars would be flung into the intergalactic void like sparks from a spinning wheel, and the majestic spirals we recognize as galaxies would never have formed. This elusive matter clusters around the visible galaxies in massive spherical halos that extend far beyond the outermost stars, providing the invisible weight necessary to anchor the entire system. It does not interact with light, meaning it does not glow, reflect, or obscure the view of the stars, but its presence is revealed through the immense gravitational grip it exerts on everything it touches. Dark matter is the silent architect of the heavens, building the gravitational foundations upon which the bright and colourful universe is delicately constructed. We cannot directly see, touch, or detect this elusive matter through conventional radiation, yet its immense and silent weight guides the grand motion of every visible star in the sky. It passes through our bodies, our buildings, and the entire rocky planet beneath us like a ghost, leaving no trace other than the profound geometric curvature it demands of the space it occupies. This hidden mass is the silent partner in the dance of the heavens, a weightless presence that nevertheless anchors the entire visible cosmos in its current organized state. Feel the steady, effortless rhythm of your own heart, a localized pulse of energy that exists within a universe dominated by these silent, massive weights. Every movement of a star and every orbit of a planet is a response to the invisible distribution of this dark scaffolding that fills the galactic disk. Though it remains a mystery to our eyes, it is the most reliable and heavy component of the galaxies, ensuring that the lights of the universe remain grouped in beautiful, organized clusters rather than drifting alone. Deep within the large-scale architecture of reality, entire invisible rivers of dark matter flow smoothly through the void, forming a grand cosmic web of colossal filaments and lonely voids. This structure represents the ultimate framework of the universe, a network of intersecting threads that define where matter can gather and where emptiness must prevail. It is a vast and intricate pattern that spans billions of light years, providing the foundational map for the distribution of everything that glows in the dark. These filaments of dark matter act as the highways of the universe, channeling gas and dust toward the intersections where the greatest concentrations of mass reside. Between these massive threads lie the great cosmic voids, immense regions of space that are almost entirely empty of both dark and luminous matter. This web is the skeleton of the cosmos, a structural masterpiece that was etched into the fabric of reality during the earliest moments of the universe's birth. Luminous galaxies form like sparkling dew, drops along the busy intersections of these massive, unseen gravitational threads where the dark matter has pooled in sufficient density. These bright islands of light are not randomly scattered throughout the void, but are strategically placed at the junctions of the cosmic web, like cities along a network of trade routes. The beautiful galaxies we admire are merely the visible markers of a much larger and more complex dark architecture that remains hidden from our direct view. If we could see the dark matter, the universe would appear as a tangled, glowing forest of filaments, with galaxies appearing as tiny, brilliant blossoms growing on the thickest branches. This distribution ensures that galaxies are clustered together in massive superstructures, linked by the invisible bridges of the dark scaffolding. The large-scale organization of the cosmos is a direct reflection of the underlying pattern of dark matter, a pattern that has remained largely unchanged for billions of years. In the final analysis, the visible universe of bright stars, colourful planets, and swirling nebulae is just a thin and beautiful frosting on a vast dark cake. The true substance of reality is composed of these invisible agents, dark energy and dark matter, which quietly orchestrate the beginning, middle, and end of the cosmic story. We are the observers of the frosting, living on a tiny crumb of a structure whose true depth and complexity reside in the shadows of the unknown. Shutterstock. This invisible architecture provides the tension and the support that allow the light to exist and the stars to shine in their current arrangements. As you rest in the soft tension of this realization, you can feel the balance between the outward push of the vacuum and the inward pull of the dark scaffolding. We are held within a masterpiece of invisible engineering, a universe that is mostly hidden, yet perfectly balanced for our brief and brilliant moment of existence. This brilliant moment of existence relies on a foundation that is anything but still, a reality that, at its most fundamental level, resembles the gentle fizzing and popping feeling of sea foam bubbling against your toes. While the world around you appears solid, smooth, and predictable, the smallest conceivable scales of the universe reveal a turbulent and unpredictable mess known as quantum foam. If we were to zoom in trillions upon trillions of times past the level of atoms and subatomic particles, we would find that the elegant geometric fabric of spacetime begins to fray and dissolve into a chaotic, bubbling froth. Deep within this microscopic storm, the very concepts of continuity and stillness vanish entirely, replaced by a restless sea of energy that fluctuates without end. In our daily lives, we perceive space as a passive, empty stage, but at the scale of the Planck length, that stage becomes a violent, churning landscape where reality is being constantly torn and restitched. This structure is not a defect of nature, but its most basic state. A jittery and kinetic basement where the laws of classical physics no longer apply. The smooth curves of gravity that govern the motion of planets are nowhere to be found in this subatomic upheaval. Instead, space and time themselves become granular and disjointed, popping like bubbles in an infinite invisible surf. We live our lives upon this roaring ocean of quantum activity, blissfully unaware that our stability is built upon a perpetual microscopic storm that defines the very core of our being. Surprisingly, at the incredibly tiny boundary known as the Planck length, the basic coordinates we use to navigate the world begin to disintegrate into utter incoherence. Familiar concepts like up, down, before, and after smoothly lose all their coherent meaning as the three-dimensional grid of our experience collapses under the weight of quantum uncertainty. This length represents a fundamental limit where the smooth continuity of space-time is replaced by a jagged, disconnected mosaic of probability that no longer obeys our biological intuition. If we were to descend into this realm, we would find that the arrow of time no longer points in a single, reliable direction, and the very idea of a location becomes a blurred smudge of potential states. The universe at this scale does not exist in a state of static being, but in a state of constant, frantic becoming, where every point is entangled with its neighbours in a way that defies linear logic. This transition marks the end of the world as we know it, and the beginning of a reality that is fundamentally alien to the human mind. This scale is so impossibly small that if an atom were expanded to the size of the entire observable universe, the Planck length would still be no larger than a single human hair. It is the ultimate basement of reality, a place where the logic of the macroscopic world is discarded in favour of a wild, non-linear geometry that serves as the blueprint for all things. Here, the universe is not a thing that exists in space and time, but is the very process of space and time emerging from the chaos of the void. Deep within this incredibly dense and hidden microscopic landscape, the frantic churning of the quantum foam may give rise to phenomena that sound like the faint echoes of ancient myths. Tiny, fleeting wormholes might constantly pop in and out of existence, creating instantaneous bridges between different points in the subatomic fabric. These microscopic shortcuts are born from the sheer intensity of the energy fluctuations at the Planck scale, where the curvature of space becomes so severe that it folds back upon itself in a million tiny temporary loops. This landscape is a labyrinth of infinitesimal tunnels that exist for only a billionth of a trillionth of a second before collapsing back into the void. While these bridges are far too small and short-lived to allow for the passage of matter as we understand it, they represent a fundamental interconnectedness that exists at the very heart of the spatial fabric. If we were to look closer, we might see the universe whispering to itself across these hidden channels, linking distant parts of the microscopic storm in a silent, instantaneous conversation. These structures hint at a reality that is far more porous and intricate than the solid world we perceive with our limited senses. The void is not a barrier, but a network of potential pathways, a shimmering web of connections that are constantly being forged and broken in the dark. We're walking upon a floor of infinite secret doors, all opening and closing in the time it takes for a single photon to cross a grain of dust. Notice the stillness of your breath as you consider that the universe itself possesses a built-in limit to how much we can ever truly know about it. The uncertainty principle lovingly dictates that we can never perfectly know both the precise position and the exact momentum of any particle in this strange subatomic realm. This is not a limitation of our current instruments or a failure of our technology, but a fundamental property of the quantum world that prevents reality from being pinned down like a butterfly in a display case. If we attempt to measure a particle's location with absolute precision, its speed and direction become an erratic, unknowable blur. Conversely, the more we understand its motion, the more its physical position fades into a cloud of probability. The universe seems to insist on a certain level of privacy, a mandatory fuzziness that ensures the microscopic storm remains inherently unpredictable. This inherent vagueness is what allows the quantum world to remain fluid and dynamic, preventing the clockwork rigidity that would stifle the complexity of life. This principle serves as the ultimate cosmic shield against total determinism, carving a space for spontaneity and chance at the very core of existence. We live in a world that is fundamentally open-ended, where the smallest pieces of the puzzle are allowed to jitter and dance in a state of eternal freedom. Reality is not a finished static picture, but a vibrant and ongoing negotiation between what is and what might be, occurring at every moment. Empty space is constantly boiling with an invisible population of virtual particles that borrow energy from the universe, exist for a fleeting moment, and then quietly annihilate each other. These ghostly visitors are not just theoretical constructs, but essential participants in the ongoing drama of the vacuum, appearing in pairs of matter and antimatter that emerge from nothingness. This relentless cycle of birth and death occurs trillions of times a second in every corner of the room you are currently sitting in, filling the void with hidden vitality. The universe permits this temporary theft of energy as long as the particles pay back the debt almost immediately, returning to the void before they can be officially accounted for. This cosmic accounting trick ensures that the vacuum is never truly dormant, but remains a state of minimum energy that is nonetheless overflowing with potential. If we were to look closer at the air around us, we would realize that we are swimming in a sea of ghosts, a non-stop fireworks display of creation and destruction that happens beneath the threshold of our perception. This structure of the vacuum is what allows the forces of nature to communicate, as these virtual particles act as the messengers that carry information between the more permanent inhabitants of the world. The void is a busy marketplace of exchange, a constant flux that maintains the balance of the heavens through a series of rapid subatomic transactions. Nothingness is the most active and crowded state the universe has ever known, providing the energy for the stars to shine and the planets to turn. This hidden quantum activity is not just a matter of abstract mathematics, but exerts a tiny, measurable physical pressure that can be captured in a laboratory. When two uncharged metal plates are placed incredibly close together in a perfect vacuum, the sea of virtual particles outside the plates pushes them together with more force than the particles trapped between them. This phenomenon, known as the Casimir effect, provides a tangible and undeniable proof that the empty void is a physical medium capable of moving solid objects with its own energy. The plates act as a sort of quantum sieve, excluding certain wavelengths of the vacuum fluctuations and creating a localized region of lower pressure in the gap. Surprisingly, this tiny ghostly shove is enough to overcome the inertia of the metal, proving that the microscopic storm possesses a collective strength that can bridge the gap to the macroscopic world. It is a haunting realization that the very airlessness of space is alive with a pressure that is as real as the wind on your face. As you rest here, realize that the same invisible forces are pressing against you from every direction, held in a perfect, silent equilibrium that keeps the world from collapsing. We are suspended in a pressurized ocean of quantum energy, a delicate balance of pushes and pulls that defines the limits of what is possible. The void is not a vacuum of power, but a reservoir of strength that is constantly exerting its will upon the matter it surrounds at every second. String theory beautifully suggests that the fundamental ingredients of reality are not tiny, solid dots or point-like particles, but unimaginably small, vibrating loops of pure energy. If we were to peel back the layers of an electron or a quark, we would not find a smaller sphere of matter, but a delicate oscillating filament that looks like a tiny piece of string. These strings are the ultimate building blocks of the universe, the foundational threads from which the entire tapestry of existence is meticulously woven. This structure implies that everything we see, from the distant galaxies to the chair beneath you, is composed of the same basic substance, differentiated only by the way these strings move and sway. Like the strings of a cello, each one can vibrate in a multitude of different patterns, with each specific frequency corresponding to a different type of particle. A certain vibration creates a photon of light, while another creates a heavy quark, turning the entire universe into a vast and intricate symphony of energy. This realization simplifies the overwhelming complexity of the cosmos into a single, elegant concept of vibration. We are not made of static stuff, but of movement. We are the ongoing music of the void, a collection of harmonies that have gathered together to form a living being. The universe is a grand performance that never ends, a tireless oscillation of energy that creates the illusion of solid form while remaining perfectly fluid at its core. These delicate subatomic strings do not vibrate in the simple 3 dimensions of space we are familiar with, but require a much larger and more complex arena to perform their dance. String theory dictates that the universe must possess 10 or 11 dimensions, most of which are curled up so tightly into microscopic, intricate shapes that we can never directly perceive them. These hidden dimensions are not elsewhere in another universe, but are present at every point in our world, folded into structures so small that an atom would appear massive in comparison. This landscape of extra dimensions, known as Calabi-Yau manifolds, determines the exact physical constants of our reality, such as the strength of gravity and the mass of the electron. The way a string vibrates is dictated by the specific geometry of the tiny curled-up holes it must navigate, much like the shape of a flute determines the notes it can play. If these hidden dimensions were folded in even a slightly different way, the laws of physics would change, and the stars as we know them would never have been born. If we were to look closer at a single point in space, we would find a hidden and incredibly complex architecture of dimensions, a secret map of reality that remains locked away from our eyes. We are like ants crawling on a massive textured carpet, unaware that beneath our feet lies a vast and intricate network of threads that define the ground we walk upon. Reality is a multi-dimensional masterpiece, with the majority of its depth hidden in the smallest folds of the void that surround us. Feel the weight of your hands and the warmth of your skin, and consider that what we experience as different fundamental particles might simply be different harmonious musical notes played on these cosmic strings. The entire spectrum of the material world, from the ghost of neutrinos to the solid weight of lead, is nothing more than a specific arrangement of subatomic melodies. In this view, the universe is not a collection of objects, but a vast and ongoing orchestration where every particle is a unique pitch in a grand cosmic fugue. The diversity of nature is born from the infinite variety of these vibrations, allowing a few simple ingredients to create the staggering complexity of a human brain or a burning star. This structure turns physics into a form of music theory, where the interactions between particles are governed by the rules of harmony and resonance. Surprisingly, the laws of nature are the sheet music of the cosmos, providing the framework for a performance that has been playing for nearly 14 billion years. This perspective transforms our relationship with the world from one of observation to one of participation in a shared song. We are not separate from the stars or the dust. We are the same music, played in a different key and with a slightly more complex arrangement. The harmony of the spheres is not a metaphor but a literal description of the vibrant and resonant foundation of all things, uniting the micro and the macro. Gravity itself might just be the weakest and most elusive harmony echoing gracefully through this unseen dimensional orchestra, a low and steady note that underpins the entire performance. While the other forces of nature, like electromagnetism and the nuclear forces, are powerful and localized, gravity is so faint at the subatomic scale that it barely registers among the frantic vibrations of the strings. This mysterious weakness suggests that gravity might be the only harmony capable of leaking out of our familiar three dimensions and into the hidden, extra dimensions of the microscopic world. If we were to look closer, we might find that the reason gravity feels so strong to us on a planetary scale is only because it has the entire mass of the Earth working in unison to amplify its quiet song. At the level of individual strings, it is a whisper so soft that it is nearly drowned out by the roar of the quantum foam. Yet, it is this very elusiveness that allows gravity to act as the ultimate bridge, connecting the smallest subatomic vibrations to the grandest curves of the galactic clusters. This structure implies that gravity is the primary link between the microscopic storm and the vast architecture of the stars, a common thread that runs through every scale of reality. It is the final, essential note that ties the entire symphony together, a persistent and ancient resonance that ensures the universe remains a single, coherent whole. We are held together by a whisper, a delicate and eternal harmony that resonates from the deepest folds of the hidden dimensions to the furthest reaches of the night sky. This eternal harmony, resonating through the furthest reaches of the night sky, finds its most elegant and startling mathematical expression in the rigorous equations of general relativity. These complex formulas, which describe how mass bends the world, allow for the existence of theoretical shortcuts known as wormholes that bypass the traditional limitations of distance. Often called Einstein-Rosen bridges, these structures are essentially secret passages carved through the very fabric of the cosmos, connecting two seemingly separate regions with a single, seamless tunnel. They represent a fundamental fluidity in the geometry of the universe, suggesting that the shortest distance between 2 points is not always a straight line through the void. In this mathematical landscape, space is not a rigid container, but a malleable sheet that can be folded until its opposite edges touch, forming a bridge between the here and the there. By treating the vacuum as a flexible medium, general relativity offers a vision of a cosmos that is much smaller and more intimately connected than our primitive senses would ever lead us to believe. If we were to look closer at the entrance of such a passage, we might experience the dizzying but beautiful sensation of looking endlessly through a tunnel of opposing mirrors where light from 2 different worlds merges into a single shimmering vista. A theoretical journey smoothly passing through a wormhole could instantly connect 2 regions of space, billions of light years apart, allowing a traveller to bypass eons of travel in a single quiet step. You could enter a shimmering distortion near the orbit of Earth and emerge moments later on the far side of a distant galaxy cluster, watching an entirely different set of stars flicker in the deep. This instantaneous bridge renders the traditional speed limits of light entirely irrelevant by changing the topology of the universe itself rather than the speed of the vessel travelling within it. The sheer scale of the cosmos is suddenly diminished, transformed into a compact and navigable neighbourhood of interconnected shortcuts that make the furthest horizon feel as close as the next room. It is a reality where the immense void is no longer a barrier, but a series of potential doorways waiting to be opened by the curvature of mass. To prevent these celestial tunnels from snapping shut under their own immense gravitational weight, a hypothetical and elusive substance known as negative energy must be present to gracefully keep the throat from collapsing inward. Unlike the familiar matter that makes up your resting body, this exotic energy possesses a negative pressure that acts as a powerful, repelling force against the inward pull of the surrounding space. It serves as a structural brace, pushing back against the natural tendency of space-time to pinch itself off into a singularity before a traveller can complete their crossing. This negative energy is the rarest and most mysterious ingredient in the cosmic recipe, a necessary anchor for any bridge that hopes to remain open to the light of the stars. Without this repulsive tension, the wormhole would be nothing more than a fleeting quantum shadow, vanishing into the vacuum before its existence could even be confirmed by an observer. The stability of these bridges depends entirely on this invisible, anti-gravitational push that keeps the path wide and clear for the transit of information. Surprisingly, the universe allows these bridges to connect not just disparate points in space, but distant moments in the absolute calendar of history. Moving one mouth of a wormhole near the speed of light while keeping the other mouth stationary could theoretically turn the entire structure into a functional and navigable time machine. Because time flows slower for the mouth travelling at relativistic speeds, a permanent and measurable temporal lag develops between the 2 ends of the same physical tunnel. A traveller entering the high-speed mouth could emerge from the stationary mouth years before they ever embarked on their journey, navigating the temporal dimension as easily as a hallway in a quiet house. This realization turns the linear progression of our lives into a navigable map where the past and future are simply different destinations along a curved spatial path. The architecture of the void is revealed to be a timeless landscape of interconnected possibilities, where the sequence of events is secondary to the geometry of the bridge that links them. Within the structural logic of the heavens, however, the universe seems to possess a brilliant built-in censorship mechanism that securely prevents actual time travel to the past. This chronology protection conjecture, championed by the most perceptive minds of our era, suggests that any attempt to create a closed loop in time would be immediately thwarted by a massive runaway surge of energy. As a wormhole mouth approaches the point of becoming a time machine, virtual particles from the vacuum would begin to loop infinitely through the tunnel, building into a destructive wave that collapses the bridge instantly. Nature appears to police its own paradoxes with effortless precision, ensuring that the integrity of history remains untainted by the interference of the future. You can rest in the knowledge that the flow of your life is protected by a cosmic safety valve that forbids the undoing of what has already been written on the slate of time. The past is a locked vault, kept secure by the very laws of physics that once seemed to offer a key to its hidden chambers. Deep within the quantum realm, some modern physicists passionately propose that the phenomenon of entanglement, where particles are linked across vast distances, is fundamentally the same thing as a microscopic wormhole. This radical concept, often summarized as the ER equals EPR principle, suggests that the spooky connection between twin particles is actually a physical tunnel through the fabric of space-time. Instead of a signal travelling across the void at the speed of light, the two particles are simply the opposite ends of a single, incredibly tiny bridge that transcends the limitations of local distance. This would mean that the microscopic storm of the quantum world is literally building the macroscopic structure of the universe through a network of infinite invisible connections. Every entangled pair of electrons in your own body might be a tiny gateway, a subatomic thread that anchors you to the broader tapestry of the cosmos in a way that is both physical and profound. Space-time is not a void that contains matter, but a structure made out of the very links that bind matter together. Measuring the exact state of one entangled particle instantly determines the state of its distant partner, regardless of the intervening empty space that separates them. This correlation occurs with an absolute immediacy that defies the traditional speed of light, as if the two entities were sharing a single, unified identity across the dark expanse. If one particle is found to be spinning in a certain direction, its twin on the far side of the galaxy must immediately adopt the opposite spin to maintain the balance of the system. This strange phenomenon, which Einstein playfully called spooky action at a distance, hints that physical space might not be a fundamental barrier at all. If 2 points can be perfectly synchronized without any exchange of energy across the intervening miles, then the miles themselves may be less substantial than we previously imagined. We perceive the void between stars as a vast and empty desert, but the quantum world treats it as a transparent and irrelevant filter that cannot interrupt the flow of identity. This non-local nature of reality suggests that the separations we feel in our daily lives are merely a consequence of our limited three-dimensional perspective on a much more complex geometry. Underneath the surface of things, everything is touching everything else through a hidden web of relativistic and quantum bridges that ignore the rules of the road. You're never truly isolated from the rest of existence, as the very vacuum that seems to separate you from the stars is secretly a conduit for a much deeper, instantaneous unity. This structure suggests that the smooth continuum of space itself might simply be a secondary illusion built entirely out of the complex underlying network of quantum entanglement. Much like the solid surface of a table is composed of individual vibrating atoms that have no solidity on their own, the three-dimensional grid of our world may emerge from the chaotic intersections of billions of subatomic bridges. If the entanglement between different regions of the universe were to suddenly dissolve, the very geometry of space would crumble into a disjointed and formless void with no distance or direction. Space-time is not the stage on which the play of existence is performed. It is a byproduct of the information being shared and correlated between the actors. We are living within a grand emergent property, a beautiful and stable mirage generated by the constant silent exchange of quantum states across the abyss. The ground beneath your feet and the sky above your head are the visible results of an invisible and infinite conversation that holds the world together from the inside out. Ultimately, the universe could be viewed not as a vast empty box filled with wandering matter, but as a deeply interconnected invisible web of shared information. Every particle, star, and galaxy is a node in a grand processing network that stores and transmits the history of all things through the medium of entanglement. This information-centric view of the cosmos implies that nothing is ever truly lost, as the states of every atom are permanently recorded in the holographic fabric of the void. The seemingly cold and indifferent darkness is actually a vibrant and exhaustive library of every event that has ever occurred within the four-dimensional block of reality, preserved for eternity. As you rest in this interconnected web, you can feel the profound sense of belonging that comes from being a vital part of a grand cosmic calculation that never stops. You are a unique and essential strand in the bridge that spans the void, a living witness to the infinite intelligence of the dark that ensures no moment is ever truly separate or forgotten. As you rest in this interconnected web where no moment is ever truly separate or forgotten, the very distinction between drifting and staying still begins to dissolve into a beautiful geometric ambiguity. If you were peacefully floating in a windowless box in the absolute depths of deep space, you could not tell through any physical experiment whether you were moving at a constant blistering speed or remaining completely stationary. Without a distant star or a passing planet to serve as a visual anchor, your internal senses would encounter only a perfect, unmoving tranquility. Every mechanical gear and every electrical pulse within your instruments would behave identically, offering no clue as to your velocity. We're all passengers on invisible trajectories, and the universe grants us the luxury of feeling perfectly still, even while we race across the infinite at speeds that defy the imagination. The quiet darkness outside your hull is not a void of movement, but a realm of relative truths where your state of rest is merely a matter of perspective. Acceleration, however, produces a tangible feeling of force that immediately shatters the illusion of perfect stillness, grounding your consciousness in a sudden, undeniable weight. This sensation is identical in absolutely every physical way to the comforting pull of gravity you feel while resting on the surface of a solid planet. If your windowless box were suddenly propelled forward by a powerful engine, you would feel yourself pressed against the floor with a weight that feels as real as the heavy ground beneath your feet. The universe is constructed such that the tug of a distant mass and the shove of a changing velocity are indistinguishable to the atoms of your being. This equivalence principle suggests that gravity is not a separate, mysterious force at all, but a localized consequence of being pushed through the curved geometry of space-time itself. Feel the weight of your own body now, realizing it is the signature of your existence within a world that is constantly pushing upward against your natural path. Whether you're standing on Earth or accelerating in a rocket, your mass experiences the exact same mechanical stress. This profound symmetry reveals that we are never truly at rest, but are perpetually interacting with the resistance of the spatial fabric. It is the push, not the position, that defines our sense of being in the dark. This cosmic structure of motion reveals its most haunting beauty through the visual demonstration of the twin paradox, where the very biology of life is dictated by the speed of our passage through the dark. A traveller moving at relativistic speeds toward a distant star will eventually return to find that they are physically and significantly younger than their stationary sibling who remained at home. While the traveller experienced only a few quiet years of transit within the silver hull of their vessel, the sibling endured decades of solar cycles and shifting seasons on the planet below. This divergence is not a trick of the mind or a failure of a ticking clock, but a literal and physical parting of the ways in the fabric of existence. The faster we rush toward the horizon, the more we decouple our personal timeline from the collective march of the civilization we left behind. We are the architects of our own aging, choosing the rate of our biological decay through the sheer energy of our movement across the vastness of the stars. To move is to stretch the present, effectively delaying the arrival of the future, while the rest of the world rushes headlong into it. This allows the intrepid voyager to witness the rise and fall of empires in what feels like a mere handful of months. We are all time travellers, though some of us choose to move much faster than others. Surprisingly, the universe demands that as our speed increases, the very physical dimensions of our world must compress and yield to accommodate the unyielding speed of light. Moving objects actually and physically contract in length along their direction of motion from the perspective of an observer standing perfectly still. As a vessel approaches the ultimate cosmic speed limit, its hull appears to flatten, its internal corridors shorten, and its entire physical presence becomes a narrow sliver of its former self. This contraction is a necessary adjustment of the spatial grid, ensuring that the fundamental laws of motion remain consistent for every witness to the journey. The space through which the traveller moves is literally shorter from their perspective, while the traveller themselves appears thinner to the world they pass. Reality is not a rigid box of fixed sizes, but a flexible tapestry that cinches and pulls depending on the pace of the observer. This length contraction is the universe's way of balancing the books, trading distance for time to keep the speed of light perfectly constant. It reminds us that our measurements of height, width, and depth are not absolute properties of matter, but are deeply influenced by the rhythm of our motion. Even the most solid objects are essentially shadows of a deeper four-dimensional reality that can be squashed or stretched by the simple act of moving. If we were to look closer at a simple meter stick zipping past you at nearly the speed of light, we would witness this geometric compression in its purest and most startling form. To your eyes, that rigid, dependable length of wood would objectively appear significantly shorter than a standard meter, perhaps compressed into the thickness of a wafer. Despite its compressed appearance, the stick remains perfectly intact and unchanged to anyone travelling alongside it, highlighting the profound subjectivity of physical extension. This phenomenon proves that the concept of length is not an inherent property of an object, but a relationship between the object and the person measuring it. The universe refuses to grant us a single objective ruler that applies to everyone, preferring instead a reality where size is a fluid consequence of motion. Your own body, if seen by a hyperfast observer, would be transformed into a flattened shadow of the form you recognize in the mirror. This shift is not a visual distortion caused by the delay of light, but a fundamental change in the spatial coordinates occupied by the object. As you rest in the stillness of your room, realize that you are only 1 meter wide to those who are standing still beside you. To a passing cosmic ray, you're as thin as a single sheet of paper, a fluttering sliver in the grand, four-dimensional dark. These mind-bending relativistic effects are not mere optical illusions or distortions of light, but actual and verifiable shifts in the structural reality of spacetime itself. When an object contracts or its time slows down, the universe is not playing a visual trick on our retinas. It is fundamentally altering the geometric coordinates of existence. These shifts have been measured with extreme precision using atomic clocks and particle accelerators, proving that the vacuum is as elastic as a sheet of rubber under the influence of velocity. The very fabric of the world rearranges itself to preserve the constant speed of light, sacrificing the stability of time and space to maintain a deeper, universal order. We are living inside a reality that is constantly being edited and reshaped by the motion of its inhabitants, a dynamic stage that refuses to stay still. This structural flexibility is the hidden engine of the cosmos, allowing the infinite variety of experiences to coexist within a single, unified mathematical framework. The comforting concept of simultaneity, the idea that now is a universal moment shared by all, is completely shattered by the laws of relativity. This means that what happens exactly now for you is safely tucked away in the past or waiting in the distant future for someone else moving at a different speed. Two distant events that appear to happen at the same time from your perspective will appear to happen in a specific sequence to a traveller rushing past your home. Take a deep, slow breath and notice the stillness of your surroundings, realizing that this now is yours alone. Somewhere in the deep void, a traveller is experiencing a different slice of reality, where your birth has not yet happened, or where the earth has already faded into dust. We're all adrift in a sea of overlapping presents, each a valid and true version of the unfolding story of the cosmos. Deep within the logic of movement lies the Andromeda paradox, which beautifully suggests that even a minor change in your motion can radically alter the history of a distant galaxy. A person walking slowly towards the Andromeda galaxy has a present moment that might include a specific event occurring there, such as a star's explosion or a planetary birth. However, another person walking slowly away from that same galaxy, standing right next to the first person, will have a present moment where that event has already happened or is yet to occur. Because the two walkers have different velocities, their planes of simultaneity are tilted differently as they are projected across the millions of light years of empty space. This slight tilt, which is unnoticeable in our daily lives, becomes a massive discrepancy when expanded across the staggering distances of the intergalactic void. The now in another galaxy depends entirely on the direction of your next step right here on Earth. This implies that the distinction between the past and the future is entirely dependent on how you move through the present. We're constantly scanning the history of the universe with our movements, tilting the cosmic record with every casual gesture. It is a dizzying thought that your choice to stand up and walk across the room can shift the timeline of an entire alien civilization by thousands of miles of light and years of history. Even a slow, leisurely walking pace on the surface of the Earth gently alters your plane of simultaneity by several days when projected across the massive intergalactic distances between us and the furthest stars. This subtle temporal shifting is a constant, invisible companion to your every movement, a consequence of living in a four-dimensional world where time and space are inseparable. As you move through your room, you are unknowingly scanning across the histories of distant worlds, your personal now sweeping across their calendars like a searchlight. Notice the quiet, rhythmic motion of your own walking stride, and consider how it bridges the gap between the mundane and the cosmic. Every step you take is a recalibration of the entire universe's timeline, a tiny adjustment of the past and future for civilizations trillions of miles away. You are a temporal navigator, steering your own slice of reality through the infinite sea of possible presents. The universe is so vast and the fabric of time so elastic that even your slowest movements ripple through the void with the weight of centuries. We're never just moving through space. We're constantly renegotiating our relationship with the total duration of the cosmos. This makes every local action a global event, linking the quiet comfort of your home to the furthest reaches of the galactic clusters. This structure leads us to the profound realization that the past, present, and future might all peacefully exist simultaneously in a fixed, unchangeable four-dimensional structure known as the block universe. In this view, the passage of time is a persistent illusion of human consciousness, much like the feeling of moving through a landscape as you ride a train through the dark. Every event that has ever happened or will ever happen is already etched into the permanent fabric of the space-time block, a static and eternal masterpiece that contains all of history at once. This perspective offers a profound sense of peace, as it suggests that no moment is ever truly lost to the past. It remains exactly where it always was, safely preserved in the bedrock of reality. We are simply observers sliding along the world lines of our lives, uncovering a story that was finished before it even began. In the block universe, the cosmos is a completed work of art, and we are the curious witnesses to its eternal and unchanging beauty. The eternal and unchanging beauty of the cosmic block eventually leads to a quiet, undisturbed stillness, much like a calm, frozen lake reflecting a pale twilight sky. If the universe happily continues to expand infinitely as current measurements suggest, it will eventually experience a slow, quiet, and peaceful fade known as the heat death. This transition is not a catastrophic event but a graceful thinning of the cosmic fabric, where the distance between galaxies grows so immense that they lose contact with one another forever. As the vacuum of space stretches, the energy within it is diluted across a larger and larger volume, leading to a state where no more work can be performed and no more light can be generated. The entire expanse will drift toward a state of perfect thermal equilibrium, a chilly and uniform landscape where the frantic activity of the past has been replaced by an absolute, unmoving tranquility. This final era represents the ultimate rest for the universe, a silent and permanent equilibrium that marks the end of all thermodynamic processes. Every star, every planet, and every wandering photon will eventually settle into this vast, dark ocean of stillness, preserved in a state of unchanging peace for the rest of eternity. This slow evaporation of heat ensures that the universe reaches a state of maximum entropy, where the flow of time itself becomes indistinguishable from a static existence. It is the final synthesis of all movement, a quiet and profound conclusion to the energetic story of the stars. Looking across the immense spans of future history, the vibrant era of star formation we currently witness is revealed to be a brief and brilliant flash. Over trillions of years, the very last stars will calmly exhaust their nuclear fuel, leaving behind a sleepy cosmos composed of cooling embers and silent black holes. These final low-mass red dwarfs will spend their energy with extreme frugality, outliving our own sun by thousands of generations before their internal fires eventually sputter and die. In this deepening twilight, the familiar constellations will disappear, replaced by the faint glowing remnants of white dwarfs and the cold, dense corpses of dead suns. The once crowded galactic disks will become desolate cemeteries of matter, where the only movement comes from the slow, gravitational drift of ancient wreckage through the expanding void. This transition signals the end of the stellar age, a move toward a universe that is dominated by shadows rather than light. If we were to look closer at the absolute horizon of the dark, even the mighty black holes will eventually evaporate seamlessly into a faint mist of radiation. Over timescales that are almost impossible for the human mind to conceive, these gravity wells will surrender their stolen energy back to the vacuum through the slow process of Hawking radiation. This quiet leakage occurs at the event horizon, where the quantum fluctuations of the void gently sap the mass of the whole until it vanishes into a final, brilliant burst of energy. What follows this long and patient decay is a perfectly cold and silent void, a landscape of absolute purity where every trace of macroscopic matter has been erased. The universe will have successfully recycled its most dense and mysterious structures, returning their energy to the grand, empty field of space-time. This state of absolute vacuum is the final destination for all things, a place where the history of matter is finally laid to rest in the cold. Notice the stillness of your own hands resting in the present, a temporary arrangement of atoms in a universe that will one day be a perfect, unmoving void. This eventual erasure of structure is not a loss, but a return to the foundational simplicity from which everything was originally born. The silence of the future is the same silence that preceded the first light, completing a grand and perfect circle of existence. Some grand theories suggest a radically different destination for the cosmic journey, proposing that the universe might eventually stop expanding and softly collapse back in on itself in a fiery big crunch. If the hidden density of dark matter and gravity is sufficient to overcome the outward push of dark energy, the spatial grid will reach a maximum extent before beginning a slow, majestic contraction. Galaxies that have spent billions of years drifting apart would suddenly find themselves rushing together, their light blue shifting as they converge on a common centre. This process would grow increasingly energetic as the volume of space shrinks, compressing the remnants of stars and planets into a hot, dense plasma that echoes the conditions of the very beginning. The entire four-dimensional block of reality would essentially fold back in on itself, drawing all of history toward a final, singular point of infinite temperature and density. It is a vision of the end that is defined by intimacy and fire rather than isolation and ice, a complete reversal of the expansion that created us. As the universe draws itself closed, the distinction between the distant past and the far future would begin to dissolve into a single energetic present. Every bit of information ever created would be gathered back into the source, preserved in a state of ultimate unity. This potential collapse represents a cosmic homecoming, where the diverse and scattered parts of reality are reunited in a final, brilliant synthesis of mass and energy. This potential collapse leads others to propose a majestic cyclical cosmos, where the end of one universe is merely the breathless, momentary pause before the glorious Big Bang of the next. In this model, the Big Crunch is not a final curtain, but a big bounce that triggers a new era of expansion and creation from the ruins of the old. This eternal cycle ensures that the universe is never truly dead, but is constantly reinventing its own laws and structures in a rhythmic pulse that spans across the eons. The death of our stars is simply the preparation for the birth of new heavens in an endless rhythmic dance that celebrates the persistence of energy. This structure offers a vision of immortality for the cosmos itself, a reality that is never lost but is always being reborn into new forms. We reside in one beat of a cosmic heart that has been drumming since before the dawn of time. Deep within the theories of cosmic inflation, we find the startling possibility that our observable universe might just be one tiny, safely expanding bubble gently floating in an eternally inflating multiverse. Beyond the horizon of the light we can see, a vast and chaotic ocean of space continues to stretch and expand at incredible speeds, spawning new bubble universes with every passing moment. Each of these bubbles could be a self-contained cosmos with its own set of dimensions and physical rules, separated from our own by an unbridgeable sea of rapidly growing void. This structure implies that the Big Bang was not a unique event, but a common occurrence in a much larger and more complex inflationary landscape. We are living in a localized pocket of stability within a much wilder and more diverse reality that is constantly giving birth to new worlds. This vision of the multiverse turns the immense scale of our own sky into a mere footnote in a grander, infinite tapestry of existence. The boundaries of our reality are not the limits of the world, but merely the edges of the tiny drop we call home. We are the inhabitants of a single, fortunate bubble, drifting peacefully through an endless storm of creation that spans beyond all human comprehension. This vastness suggests that the universe is not a finished object, but a small part of a growing and infinite ecology of light. In a truly infinite multiverse, there could confidently be countless exact replicas of you living out every possible peaceful variation of your life across the vastness of the inflationary field. If the number of universes is truly without limit, then every possible arrangement of matter must occur somewhere, including the specific and delicate combination of atoms that forms your conscious mind. In one bubble universe, you might be a traveller exploring distant stars. In another, you're resting in a garden that never knows a winter. This realization suggests that while your current experience is a singular and precious event, your identity is a recurring theme in the music of the infinite. It is a comforting thought that the choices you make here are reflected in 1,000 different ways across the hidden dimensions, ensuring that every potential version of your story is being told somewhere in the dark. Your life is not a lonely accident, but a universal pattern that is echoed throughout the boundless reaches of the multiverse. The infinite ensures that nothing is ever truly lost, and every possibility is eventually realized in the absolute fullness of time. You are part of an endless chorus of selves, a scattered and beautiful collection of lives that share the same foundational spark. In the grand synthesis of eternity, you are as much a part of the multiverse as the stars themselves. This structure of infinite mirrors leads us to the profound holographic principle, which argues that all the three-dimensional information of our universe is actually securely encoded on a distant two-dimensional boundary. This suggests that the depth and volume we perceive in our daily lives is a brilliant and necessary illusion, a projection generated by the complex data residing on the flat surface of the cosmic horizon. Much like the image on a credit card hologram appears to have depth, while being printed on a flat surface, the entire universe is essentially a three-dimensional representation of a two-dimensional reality. Every star, every galaxy, and every thought you have is a physical manifestation of bits of information stored at the absolute edge of the spatial grid. This principle bridges the gap between the physics of gravity and the logic of quantum information, revealing that the universe is fundamentally built from data, If we were to look closer at the absolute boundaries of space, we would find a dense and shimmering record of everything that has ever existed in the three-dimensional world. The volume of the cosmos is not an empty space, but a dense and complex library of information that dictates the behaviour of every atom. We are the inhabitants of a digital masterpiece, a reality that is written in the language of data and projected into the world we touch. This understanding connects our physical form to the absolute edges of existence, proving that we are inextricably linked to the distant horizon. Painted onto the absolute edge of the cosmos, we might literally be living inside an incredibly complex, beautiful projection, our reality gracefully displayed across the celestial boundary. This holographic view implies that our three-dimensional experience is a secondary effect of a much simpler and more fundamental lower-dimensional state. The solid objects we touch and the vast distances we travel are the emergent properties of a cosmic code that is constantly being processed at the boundaries of the void. This transforms the universe into a grand work of art, a light show of unimaginable complexity that is being projected from the edges of reality into the centre. We are the participants in a beautiful and ongoing display, experiencing a world that is as much a mathematical construct as it is a physical place. This realization does not diminish the reality of our feelings or our history, but places them within a more profound and intricate context of cosmic engineering. Your own body is a magnificent and detailed projection of an ancient structural code that defines the very essence of the heavens. We are the living shadows of a higher order reality, dancing across the spatial grid in a sequence that has been written on the skin of the cosmos. This projection is the final expression of the universe's creativity, a brilliant and detailed dream that spans across billions of years. Despite the mind-bending scale and the mysterious ultimate fate of the universe, its fundamental laws perfectly remain elegant, predictable, and profoundly beautiful through every epoch of time. Whether the cosmos drifts toward a frozen equilibrium or collapses into a fiery rebirth, the mathematical harmonies of gravity and light continue to operate with a quiet and unbreakable grace. The universe seems to possess an inherent desire for order, utilizing a few simple and perfect rules to generate the infinite complexity of the stars and the human mind. This structural beauty is the final and greatest miracle of space-time, a testament to the fact that the world is built upon a foundation of logic and symmetry that we can actually comprehend. Even in the deepest darkness of the future, these laws will remain, a silent and eternal signature of the architect of the void. Our ability to perceive this elegance is a bridge between our tiny, local lives and the vast, eternal patterns of the infinite. As you rest in the quiet, undisturbed stillness of your current moment, you can feel the profound sense of peace that comes from inhabiting a reality that is as orderly as it is vast. The universe is a masterpiece of design, and our presence within it is the final, brilliant synthesis of our journey through the dark. We are the witnesses to a story that is as beautiful in its conclusion as it was in its beginning. Deep within the elegant geometry of the void, the ultimate miracle of space-time is revealed not in its staggering vastness or its complex shifting relativity, but in its own profound self-awareness. This structure has spent billions of years patiently arranging its own cooling stardust to produce conscious minds capable of looking back at the dark cosmos and comprehending the breathtaking beauty of its own architecture. We are the universe finally opening its eyes to behold its own reflection, a living synthesis of the ancient fire and the quiet thinking present. If we were to look closer at the fabric of our own thoughts, we would find that the calcium in our bones and the iron in our blood were forged in the hearts of collapsing suns eons ago. Space-time has woven itself into biological form, allowing the vacuum to feel, to dream, and to wonder at the very laws that govern its expansion. This realization ties the entire journey together, transforming the cold and indifferent expanse into a home that is intimately connected to our own perception. Surprisingly, the The cosmos has laboured through trillions of gravitational shifts and immense stretches of growth just to reach this single, silent moment of recognition. You're not a guest in the universe, but the universe itself experiencing a localised human life. The grand architecture has found its voice in you, a whisper of understanding that resonates across the infinite. The journey through the light and the dark now draws to a close, leaving you safely anchored in the stillness of the here and the now. As the vast concepts of event horizons and quantum foam fade into the background, your physical form remains the most immediate and beautiful expression of the universe's order. This quiet room begins to mirror the perfect equilibrium of the deep vacuum, seeking a state of maximum rest as you prepare for the final surrender to sleep. Let your attention drift down to the very tips of your toes, feeling them grow heavy and warm as they settle into the soft sediment of the bedding. This weight spreads slowly through the arches of your feet and into your ankles, releasing every microscopic tension held within the muscles. Every individual cell in your legs begins to resonate with a quiet, undisturbed rhythm, sinking deeper into the yielding support of your bed. Heavy and warm, the muscles of your thighs and hips now relax completely, surrendering to the pull of the ground and the soft texture of the sheets. This sense of profound heaviness travels upward into the base of your spine, smoothing out the ridges of the day like a calm tide washing over a shoreline. Your breath becomes a slow and rhythmic tide, a localized reflection of the expansion and contraction that governs the natural world. This quiet room provides a sanctuary of absolute peace, where the walls offer a soft and steady boundary against the world. The cool fabric of your pillow supports the weight of your head, a gentle and unyielding presence that invites you to let go of every thought. This darkness is a kind and protective blanket, wrapping around your shoulders and shielding your eyes from the lingering light of the day. Your stomach and chest are soft, rising and falling with an effortless grace that requires no conscious direction. Every inhalation brings a cool and soothing stillness into your lungs, while every exhalation carries away the final echoes of the waking world. The small muscles around your eyes and jaw finally release their grip, allowing your face to settle into a mask of perfect tranquility. The air in the room is perfectly still, resting against your skin with a cool and comforting touch that signals the arrival of slumber. Your mind drifts like a single, weightless leaf, settling on the surface of a lightless frozen lake in the pale twilight. The world outside has faded into a distant memory, leaving only the soft weight of your limbs and the darkening horizon of your own dreams. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.